toast.
All right, and start recording in three, two, and one. All right, and welcome back to the Reserve Squad Midweek Show, a soccer podcast covering all things in the EPL from a bench perspective. I'm here, Spin, and I'm joined by my co-host Rex. And Rex, it was an easy weekend for me because no Liverpool played. They're no longer in really any of the competitions now, and that's a little bit weird for me because they were in every final last year. And VCU lost the first game on Friday in the basketball tournament, so my weekend was actually pretty dull. But I guess the other side to that is there was no one to disappoint me on the weekend as well. So I don't know how was your
True.
weekend?
Hello, Ben. It was pretty good. Yeah, doing the Shaka. It was nice to have a easy game for Arsenal at least. Because a lot of their games have been really close and like they barely win or they have to come from behind. So it was nice to have them like jump out to an early lead and just really like relax and enjoy them playing and not have to be worried all the time. Like we say, like every game's hard in the Premier League, and I thought this one would be pretty hard too. But it was nice to have a little break, and we'll talk about some of the injuries that Arsenal had in midweek, and
Yeah.
they managed to avoid injuries at least in this game. So, and some of the replacements played pretty well. We'll talk about that later. But yeah, it was nice. It was a good weekend and nice and relaxing.
Well, yeah, especially because of what happened in Europa. That could have been kind of you didn't know necessarily the mindset that the players were going to go into, and you're right. They absolutely dismantled a Palace team that while they didn't offer a ton versus Man City just a week before, they made it really hard for Man City just a week ago, and that looked an entirely different team. And I don't necessarily know if that was because of the way Arsenal were playing. Arsenal were very, very good, to their credit, but Palace also made a very weird decision in the midweek, and I think I'm going to lead off with that for my story of the week, and I do think it's Vieira. Now, I've been saying for a couple of weeks now, I've been worried about Palace as maybe being a team that could maybe slip into this relegation fight, even though they've been like 12th, for, I want to say, since the Christmas break. Essentially, it's felt like they've been in a good spot. But
Yeah.
they have looked a little lifeless and directionless at times, and they definitely looked at versus Arsenal. And I think there's only 10-ish games left in the season, and this does feel like it's a risk. And I can't now. Sometimes this maybe works, but the thing I immediately thought about is this feels similar to what Burnley did last year with Dyche. And the Burnley did have a little bit of a manager bump with the guy that they brought in too, but they eventually did go down. And I think this is maybe sealing their fate. I didn't really understand the idea of maybe there is some kind of mutual agreement, but it was weird. It was weird to let go of Vieira just a few weeks ago in the season, and now your team probably really is going to be in the thick of things.
Yeah. Well, what's weird too, and I mean, it's disappointing to me as well, but it seemed like he actually had like a good project building. At least like all of last year, they're hard to beat.
I thought so too.
This year's a little different, but I think they losing Gallagher and really, I mean, they didn't really replace him. Maybe with like Lakonga in January, but I mean, that's not necessarily comparable. So that hurts. And then you mentioned a lot of injuries too this year has definitely hurt, but it's just so weird because you think you have a manager where he's building a project and everything's going in the right direction, and then like all of a sudden it's a long streak of games without a win, and they're dangerously close to the relegation zone, and Crystal Palace owners decide to pull the trigger, and I mean now it looks like they're bringing in Hodgson again.
And that makes
I
it even
mean,
worse, to be honest. Like if you had a backup plan, I would maybe understand it. Roy Hodgson was able to keep them up all those years, and this also feels similar to like West Brom bringing in like Allardyce, like for hey, save us. But when you think about what Hodgson was able to do when he was able to keep Palace up all those years, is he banked in wins early. If you think about how his teams were playing, from March and April, they were in relegation, at least form, every single season, and it's just because
yeah,
they banked enough wins early. And now, can you play with 11 men behind the ball and maybe eke out a couple results? Maybe, but I'm quite skeptical about that. In fact, I don't know. Did you see Vincent Company kind of talk about this, like before the
yeah,
Burnley Man City game?
yeah. I
Hey,
did. I saw his quote.
what were your thoughts on his comments?
Yeah, I mean, I think we both agree with him. it might be like just a little bit of managers looking out for another manager kind of thing. But
Could
yeah,
be.
I agree with them. They have been unlucky this year with some injuries and things like that. I just don't. Yeah, like you said, I don't think Hodgson is really, even if he does like keep them up. I don't think he'd be the coach for next season. They need to go out and get someone. So it is like it makes sense if they have someone really good, maybe that had already like agreed, hey, if you fire Vieira, I'll be willing to come in, and it was like a good coach, then it would make sense. But I don't know. This doesn't really. I mean, maybe they're banking on his pedigree of keeping people up. But like you said, it's because of the top part of the season where they got points and they looked really good, and second half of the season, it was kind of like the situation they're in now, where they're not winning, and you're like they're going to get dragged in.
Yeah,
So I don't know. It doesn't make sense. I do agree with what company said, even though it might be like another manager looking out for another manager,
because he
because he's
well, well,
everyone gets fired. But
well, to kind of add on to it, basically he said Palace's, I mean, Vieira overachieved with the squad that he was dealing with. He also mentioned how in this little run of form that they were in, one, he mentioned the teams that they had faced, which was like it was Liverpool, it was Man City, there were a few others in there. But another thing too is he talked about how uh, I'm actually kind of drawing for a blank, but basically he just said that you look at the squad that they've had, and he mentioned like they're in 12th place. And basically he was just like, I don't know what else you expect. Oh, he mentioned Zaha, yeah, Zaha being out for a lot of those
mm,
games, which
yeah,
I do think is a fair thing to say. Um,
definitely.
and for the Arsenal game, losing Anderson before the game really did kind of show up, and I think maybe another thing to kind of get to is regardless of what Palace do next season regarding who manages them. Funny enough, they wouldn't do a bad job to actually look at company if even though company is going to be up with Burnley. Um,
Yeah,
is you need to look at who your football scouting director is, or on the sporting side, because you look at the recruitment over the last years, it's been kind of weird. Like one injury to Anderson, and you've got James Tompkins as his backup. Now, maybe it could have been Chris Richards, but he didn't want to play Chris Richards for some reason. You look at who the fullback is. It's either Nathaniel Klein at right back, or it's Joe Ward, which we saw versus Arsenal, who looks like he's got the same amount of pace that I would have at my age, and that's just the recruiting at the back line has been shoddy. You mentioned how there hasn't really been a plan in place other than these loan ideas. You're right. They missed what Gallagher offered them so much. And kind of another thing too is they have a lot of like these like kind of like Elise is kind of a similar player to Zaha. To me, he's not really well. Zaha, maybe that's not really fair because Zaha can actually beat people 1v1 on the wing. Elise is just kind of there. He seems he kind of struggles when he's played on the wing. Eze is kind of a similar player, and we actually haven't seen Eze in a number of these games. And just the idea around how to build a squad has been kind of off. They've also brought in a couple strikers, Mateta and Edouard, who haven't really hit the ground running as well, which I think is hurt. They let Benteke go. And so it's definitely a project, regardless if they stay up or not.
oh yeah, yeah. Some money's gonna have to be spent in the summer if they stay up
Or
to just keep them competitive in the Premier League.
Or just someone needs to come in and have an idea, like have a blueprint for for something they need to build on in the future.
That's
Because
yeah, that's a good point because
because
they don't
well
they don't have an
before
identity when they play right
before
now
Vieira
either.
came in, they lost like 10 players out of contract. Like Vieira basically came in. A lot of people thought Palace was going to be relegated last year, and Vieira did a really good job to keep them up because he was playing with basically a new team, and not only a new team, he was playing with players that knew how to play Hodgson ball and tried to get them to play possession ball. He got them playing pretty attractive stuff last year.
Yeah,
It's not like Vieira's changed. It's just you missed Hodgson, and I mean not Hodgson. You missed Gallagher, like you mentioned, and there's just been kind of a it's been an unfortunate story to follow. So maybe they're walking away at the end of the season, I would have understood, but not necessarily now, and
yeah.
that is unfortunate. But anyways, we'll move on. Before we start with the FA Cup, because it was an FA Cup weekend, which I didn't really pay attention too much. We will talk about what happened. Liverpool did play the last week. It wasn't in the league or in the FA Cup. It was in the Champions League, and they did lose 1-0 to Real Madrid. It could have been a 10-2 aggregate. Allison had some amazing saves. He really keep this from being
Yeah.
embarrassing. And what's unfortunate for me is I don't really view Real Madrid as like this super dominant Galactico team this year. And we saw them as they lost on the weekend to Barcelona with like Sergio Roberto in midfield.
Mhm.
It's not like Pedri was back there. And I do think it was kind of a missed opportunity. Darwin Núñez was pulled again. I didn't necessarily agree with that. Cody Gakpo was played as like the right central midfielder. Klopp still tried to play like a 4-3-3, and the midfield was Cody Gakpo, Fabinho, and Milner. Yuck.
Mhm.
And Nunez was also played as like a left winger, which I didn't really understand because it seems like he only has like one idea when he plays on the left side. And it didn't feel like him and Jota were kind of connecting well. It was a mess. And it again, it could have been worse. I would like to see maybe Ox get a run of games in midfield because he did come on and at least showed something. Also, I think Klopp's treatment of Fabio Cavallo has been really off. I don't really understand why he hasn't at least given him, some minutes here and there. He brings him on, and he brings him on in like the 90th minute. But that's been Liverpool's season. The only thing they have to play for now is in the league, and that is just it is what it is. And I don't the thing I was thinking about in real time is this could possibly be the last time I see a Jurgen Klopp managed Liverpool team in the Champions League. Because he
Ooh.
extended his contract, but he only extended it to I think 2024. You're not going to be able to be in the Champions League until September 2024, and that's if you're able to turn everything around next season. Now maybe they will, but maybe they won't. So, there's gonna be there's still a lot of, clouds because they don't necessarily know who's gonna be owning them. They don't know if it's gonna be FSG or, they're gonna be able to find some minority investment, which I think is kinda be the plan. They wanna stick around, but just kinda get someone else to offer some cash flow. But even then, they still have to do a midfield overhaul. And whether it's Bellingham
Yeah.
or someone else, it needs to be more than just Bellingham. And then there needs to be maybe some ideas on what to do at the back line because Kanate isn't necessarily always fit. The guy they brought in for Trent Alexander-Arnold at right back is he had like a growing spurt, growing pains issue, and he basically had to have an operation. Calvin Ramsey, and we haven't been able to see him all season. So I don't know if that is, and I think they got him because he was cheap. And they've been doing that a
Yeah.
lot. They've been trying to go for these clever cheap deals, and sometimes you get Andrew Robinson, and sometimes you don't, and sometimes you get eggs. And I'm not saying Calvin Ramsey is an egg, but at least for this season he has been. And
Yeah, 'cause you
so
just haven't seen him play.
yeah, and yeah, that was just my chance to kind of rant a little bit about what happened with the Real Madrid Liverpool game. I mean, it was fun. It was fun for the neutral. If you didn't know that what the aggregate score was, it was end to end. Both keepers were forced to make pretty big saves, and but both it almost felt like a preseason game, to be honest, because how open it was and how attack
Mm.
minded everyone was. There wasn't a whole lot of midfield. Like usually a team with Modric and Cruz, you imagine there'd be a lot of control. There was none of that. There was just kind of let's get the ball to Vinny and let's see him try to do some 1v1 stuff. And he actually embarrassed Trent Alexander Arnold in a lot of 1v1s, unfortunately.
Well, yeah, but he does that to a lot of fullbacks.
True. And so that was what my Wednesday or Tuesday was, and you didn't. We'll let you speak about what happened with your Thursday when we get to Arsenal, but let's recap the FA Cup first. So in Man City and Burnley, the scoreline I do think is harsh. To be honest, now maybe that's a stupid thing to say, but Holland gets 2 goals within like 3 minutes after like the 32nd minute mark, but before that. Burnley maybe had the two best chances in the game. It did take City a while to get clicking, and when they got clicking, I mean, the Holland's third goal came in the 59th minute, and then they really just kind of packed it on after that when the game was killed. Uh, I think the talking point was Vincent Company returned to the Etihad, and he's returned with a really good team. What he's done with Burnley has been amazing.
It really
Um,
has been. Yeah.
and unfortunately, people are just gotta kind of look at the scoreline here, but it was maybe I really liked what he said afterward too, because, I don't know if you heard this or not. Basically, he said, "We need to not look like we are first in the championship. We need to view ourselves as 21st in England." And
Ooh,
that
I
was the
like
kind of
that.
mindset, and basically he was like, maybe his players went into this thinking, "Hey, we're playing with City, maybe we're here." And it was a nice little wake-up call, "Not yet."
Yeah. Yeah, he's done a good job though. Yeah, and it'll be a good learning curve, I think, for him. He'll take some things from that. But yeah, he's done a great job, and that it looks like they already have it locked up, the first place, automatic, which
I
is
think so.
it's really hard to do. Like he's got it locked up pretty early. It seems like it's hard to do in the championship. Because it's just there's so many games. You're playing 2 games a week at least. So he's done a good job. And if they do get promoted, hopefully Burnley will be able to like buy him some players that he wants, because they're going to have to back him, especially now with all the clubs in the Premier League are getting backed financially for the most part. So hopefully Burnley will spend more money than they did when they had Deitch and they were in
And
the
that was
Premier
an
League
issue
because
when they had
they're
Dyche, you're
gonna.
right. I remember
It
Dyche
was,
complaining about
yeah.
that. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it was like windows and windows and windows that they just wouldn't buy players, and you'd be like, "You're in a relegation battle every year. You should probably buy Deitch a couple players." And then didn't they finally buy him some players like
They bought him
last season in the
they bought him like
summer?
Co they bought him like Cornet. I
Yeah.
think I
Oh
think
yeah,
he
yeah,
was
yeah.
I think he was maybe even a record, for them, but, yeah, and he might have kept them up if he hadn't been injured, but
Yeah, that's true.
that's very
Yeah,
unfortunate.
and he's been injured like this season too for West Ham a lot. So
I mean, I mentioned how Holland did get the first 3 goals. He does get a hat trick. That seems to be kind of what he does. What was that? 7 goals in the week for him because of what he did versus Leipzig. Uh,
crazy.
he had 4. He might have had 5 goals, so maybe it's 8 goals. For 8 goals in 2
Jeez.
games, not that bad of a bad day's work, and he didn't play, the full game, and I think either. Alvarez, popped up with 2 goals as well. I kind of think that's maybe the sneaky storyline here, is when Alvarez and Holland start together, they look good. And it's just kind of
Yeah.
weird how, Pep doesn't like doing that a whole lot. 2 players that are more focused on scoring goals and not necessarily keeping hold of the ball. I think there's maybe some of that. It was also interesting to see Foden start, instead of Grealish. I
Yeah.
Foden played well on the left side. And so, I don't know where necessarily to start. Maybe we'll start here. Holland's on 41 goals for the season. He could maybe end with 55. He can maybe end with 60. Well, or maybe he just ends at, I don't know. Maybe he only ends with 50. We don't necessarily know, but I mean, do you have any kind of thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's been a really weird season for him because there are
Yep.
some games where he like doesn't even touch the ball. There's some games where he doesn't touch the ball and he still gets like 2 or 3 goals. And obviously, like a lot of people are kind of questioning whether or not he fits the City mold. Are they actually better with him, or were they better last year without him?
Yeah.
I mean, the goals. I think the
Fair.
goals speak for themselves. Honestly, it's a crap ton of goals, and maybe they have to, Pep and City have to alter the way they play a little bit. But I mean, I can't think of a club that wouldn't want a striker that's scoring 40 to 50 goals a season. So it's been, I think if anything, it's just an adjustment period for City to get used to playing with someone like Holland, which is funny
100%.
because
Yep.
usually it's like the player has to get adjusted to the Premier League, and I mean it looked like he adjusted really fast. And he's a fun player to watch. I feel like some of the stick he does get, it's not his fault, and maybe it's motivating him too to score like all these goals. But yeah, he's been really good. I just think, like we said, City has to kind of figure out how to play with him, and that's the issue. Not Holland and Holland not playing well. I mean, he could use more touches maybe, but if he gets 10 touches and scores 2 goals, then it doesn't really matter, I guess, right? So
Well, I think the stat that I saw versus Leipzig was he did have more goals and passes. Which when you think about a Pep side, also that's quite
wow,
insane as well.
it
Um,
really is.
completed passes at least. Maybe he tried something and it didn't come off. I mean, what he offers is like he's like the only guy that really is going to try. Just basically, he runs off the shoulder on CBs every single minute, and sometimes he's not even getting played the ball. But what he's doing is that is forcing them to at least mark that because you can play anything behind him or anything behind, yeah, anything for him to run onto, and he's got such pace for his size. It really isn't fair. And but I think that's where one of the maybe the first goal even comes from. It's just kind of a ball kicked over the top, and he's able to beat the center back, and he's also able to slide it in before the keeper's able to get there. And a couple of these were just kind of tap ins, or I think even one there was a shot that was, like, kinda hit off the post, and he just got the rebound. He's just always in the right spot, which is kind of annoying.
Yeah,
Like, you're right, there have been some games where, like, some teams have at least been able to kind of cope with him, but that's where I think Alvarez helps out, because Alvarez can
yeah,
also kinda be that kind of fox in the box, as well, and so when you can put all your attention on Holland, but you can't put your attention on both. And I think one thing that was interesting
true.
here is Kevin De Bruyne also played this game, and saw Alvarez and De Bruyne kind of play together. Now, we've talked about Gundogan so much; it seems like maybe Alvarez was played over Gundogan. I'm wondering if you can maybe try this same kind of thing, and you know how he's tried that weird, Bernardo Silva at like left back kind of role, like, kind of the fake back three. Maybe he's fullback, like we saw versus Arsenal. I'm wondering if Gundogan
Yeah.
could play that role as well. Um,
Ooh,
I
interesting.
think I think Gundogan's actually a better midfielder. He's better on the ball. I think you need him to play for build up and when you're like pressing. Have him next to Rodri. That to me would almost be that would be a really hard team to break down because Ake has been so good defensively on that left side. So you don't really need a whole lot of defensive cover. You just need someone to somewhat track back and help out if needed. I think Gundogan could do that, and if that's the case, that makes a City team definitely scary. With
Yeah,
if you because I've always struggled. How do you fit Alvarez and Gundogan De Bruyne and Gundogan? With obviously Holland, and, like, maybe that's kind of the
yeah.
weird way to do it.
Mm. I mean, maybe. I mean, Gundogan has been able to play basically everywhere else on the pitch in his career and play
I think
places,
yeah,
at a high level. So, yeah, that could possibly work. And I think if you were to have like a manager in Europe that would do something kind of outside the box, it would be Pep. You would think.
I mean,
Maybe like some other up and coming managers, but
I wouldn't think of that on my own, but just the way he's played Rico Lewis and played Bernardo Silva, he's already done this, and so
yeah.
you just the weird how he hasn't done it with this player, specifically.
True, and we got a taste of him too with Argentina in the World Cup, and he was fantastic. So
He was.
we know what he can offer, and Pep knows what he can offer. I mean, he's young. Maybe Pep's worried about that, but yeah, he looks a heck of a player when he plays. And I don't know if like I think there's rumors he might leave at the end of the year just because being behind Holland is going to see your minutes be diminished. But if Pep keeps playing him with Holland, then I think that there's a path for him to stay because he's going to get his game minutes that he wants.
I would oh, yeah, there's no way. Someone would have to offer a boatload. Because like you said, also, possibly the face of Argentina after Messi. Well,
Yeah,
that's maybe
we're
going too far,
into.
but, um,
Well, he's one of them though. Yeah,
yeah. Well, you're right. He was really big for them for their World Cup run, and I remember kind of saying it even before he played versus Bournemouth. It was weird we hadn't really seen him get given minutes because after the World Cup, we didn't see him for a bit.
yeah,
And the sixth goal that Man City scores, Alvarez does amazing. Because he gets the ball on the run and then he has just a ridiculous finish. Um, and so that is maybe the game here. I mean, any kind of lasting thoughts on Burnley for you, or they showed up for like 30 minutes, I want to say.
yeah. It's really hard. I'm sure. I mean, not only are you playing a Premier League team and you're aside from the Championship, but you're playing, the Premier League champions from last year, second place this year. I just a different can of fish,
Yep,
than who you're playing in the Championship. I don't know who's second place in the Championship, but
I think it's Sheffield
City's Sheffield. Ooh, but City's,
who had a
world class
who had a good weekend
above them.
themselves.
They did. Yeah, they're having a cup run too. But yeah, I mean, I honestly am looking forward to seeing Burnley and company if company stays with them. I'm looking forward to seeing them in the Premier League, and like we said earlier, if they get a little bit of financial backing this time, it could be good to see. I like these new young managers that it wasn't that long ago that we were, watching company play. So,
Hmm.
I kind of like it. We'll see what happens. It might have a little bit of that Vieira vibe to it, but it'll be a fun storyline at the very least to follow next season.
And I mean, absolutely, and they have a couple of, like, young players as well. He's brought in. I don't know if they'll have him next year, but the Isaac Mattson, who I think is a Chelsea player. He's looked pretty
Oh,
bright when I watched him. I think he's supposed to be like their left back, but he really is like kind of the left winger. He's attack minded. And he's a fun
so
little player. But
Chelsea will probably want him to only play 5 minutes
it
every
is
once in a while, so they want
true.
to keep him.
Well, maybe they'll. I mean, they might lose Chilwell to City. We'll maybe talk about that. But
Ooh,
Burnley, the job that he's done is quite admirable because they play an entirely different style than what they were doing with Dyche. And again, it's kind of come in. He's come in and kind of completely changed a bit how they play. They keep the ball. Their passing numbers are really good in the championship. Um,
yeah, that's a good point. It's not the Burnley that we were used to seeing for so many years in the
yeah.
Premier League.
And then we'll move on to the other team in Manchester, because this one turned into a bit of a, I don't say a barn burner, a bit of a carnival show.
That's a good word
Manchester
for it.
United does go on to win 2-1 over Fulham, and the goals are not necessarily the storyline here. I mean, Mitrovic does get the first one, I think in like the 50th minute, so Manchester United were down. This was the first game that Manchester United were not able to play without Casemiro. They were able to have him in the Europa game, and then that maybe showed up a little bit. But then Bruno was able to get a PK, and we'll definitely talk about why. And then Sabitzer, just a couple of minutes later, is able to tack on the all important second goal. And he was playing against a Fulham team that had 9 men. It started with 11 and had 9 men in basically 2 minutes, and so well, maybe kind of start there. I mean, none of these were the wrong decisions, but just Fulham completely unraveled. And I think the thing I want to mention is our buddy Alex texted, "Oh, Fulham shouldn't have done that." And basically, after Fulham scored the first goal, and this guy must have an amazing hex on him because in the end, maybe that's right. Maybe that kind of that was the wrong thing for them to do because just a lot of crazy stuff happened where maybe to kind of touch on before even the PK is Ten Hag brought on Anthony, and I've kind of gotten on Anthony in a number of these games.
Oh, yeah.
He
Yeah,
came on
same
and
here.
was an impact sub. He was really good, and the reason why they get this PK is because of Anthony. He's able to get the ball on a fast break, and he plays the right pass to Sancho. I thought Sancho actually kind of messed up. He tries to go around the keeper, and then right at the very end, Sancho is able to get past Leno and then goes for goal. And it's William. It hits William basically in the arm, clearing it off the line. And you do see William raise his arm to do that. So
Yeah,
it's a stop. It's a denial of a goal scoring opportunity. I don't think there's anything the
absolutely.
ref could do. It was kind of weird how the ref didn't actually call it in real time. But after VAR was able to look at it, you're like, oh, this is not good. And then there were three reds in here. I think the coach was sent off, or some kind of assistant coach was sent off first, and
Yeah,
then you see
yeah.
Mitrovic arguing, and what he does is he puts his hand on like the shoulder, and I guess that's like the big no no.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely, yeah.
and he was
No
he was he
complaints
was
about
he
that
was
one.
sent off for arguing with that, and it's possible that he's not going to be looking at 3 games. He could be looking at a little bit more because of this. I've seen that
Yeah,
they're talking a lengthy suspension because their refs are like
can't touch the
a
ref, yeah.
protected class.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. You can't touch him, you can't shove him, anything like that. What did you see that he might miss? Because I was reading kind of like maybe 5 to 10 games,
I saw something.
10 obviously being at the high end,
I
but
saw I saw it could be, the season.
oh, really? Wow, that'd be
Well,
crazy. Well,
if it's 10
10
games.
games would be basically the season, yeah.
Yeah,
I guess the little bit of silver lining for Fulham, obviously, they're in a good place. They're not going to get relegated, but they have kind of um, in the second half of the season, they have kind of
been a
they
wake up
don't have
call.
to rely on Mitrovic though,
Sure.
because he has kind of slumped in the second half. So they got like Solomon, some other players that can possibly pick up the slack. But if he is out suspended for a while, at least they're in a safe spot. And like we said, they got some players now that can pick up the slack. Maybe we'll see. It's a good opportunity for him at least.
Definitely, it's gotta be a kick, though, if you are a Fulham fan because, only a couple weeks ago there was talk, oh, maybe you could try for a Europe spot just because where you are in the table. Now Jeremy kept telling
Yeah.
me that he was like Fulham. Jeremy has like a fun thing with Fulham fans for some reason. I guess because of Brentford in the championship.
Oh, they hate each other. Yeah, they hate each other.
He was just like, the XG, this is fool's gold, and like the danger here is if Fulham in the season in a bit of a rut, you sometimes see teams start the next season in the same kind of rut. Now, I don't necessarily know if that's necessarily happened, but you don't like it. You don't like to see when teams have in seasons poorly, and you do worry a little bit of that happening here.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Well,
and
in the summer, like that, they're not off for a long time either. So it's not like it's like 3 months and then the season starts again, and you can kind of forget about the form you are in. It's like, you don't get much time off, so you're right back in it. And if you have that mindset that you did the last season and not playing well, then yeah, I mean, odds are things aren't going to start well for you. There's just not enough time for the players to like completely detox and forget about like the last season. It's only like, what do they get, like a month off before it's preseason? So it's just not enough time.
and I think it's possible you're going to have couple teams try to go for their best player. Well, Mitrovic, I guess, is their best player. Probably try to go for Paulinho. And so we've
Yeah,
seen how Fulham have been without him, and they have not been good. They've tried the player that they brought in, the Serbian midfielder, Lukic, has not necessarily kind of hit the ground, or Sucic has not
yeah,
necessarily
something like that.
hit the ground running, and so
Yeah,
I guess that's kind of, we don't necessarily have to go into full dooms mode off of Fulham, but that was not
yeah,
the best way to do the FA Cup game. And if the Mitrovic suspension does happen, we're going to see a lot of Carlos Vinicius. You imagine? And
yeah,
so and we won't see any of Fulham. William, I think, will have a 3-game ban for doing what he did, and so that is what it is.
yeah.
And
They're
we'll
gonna have to deal with it.
and we'll move on to Brighton and Grimsby. This one, the scoreline is 5-0, and they get the first goal in like the 6 minutes. I mean, you're playing Grimsby Town, and Grimsby were able to get that. I think that shock upset over Southampton. But Brighton kind of did what they needed to do. I like how Ferguson was able to get on the score sheet again. So that was
Yeah,
good. But a lot of
he
these
played
goals,
well.
were poor. It's just kind of, it's either deflections or just kind of uh, uh, maybe defensive errors in a lot of these. I mean, it's kind of a little bit what you'd expect, kind of a difference in class. But I think it's good for Brighton to at least do what they're supposed to do, and they're going to be a hard out for everyone that's remaining.
I think so. Yeah, I really do. And it's great to see Ferguson. I mean, he's been playing in the Premier League, but this is where he can really kind of really learn, and really get a lot of minutes. And I was actually reading an interesting article that he is a huge Man U fan, and
Of course.
well, he was just very excited about playing with Welbeck. He was like, I can't believe I'm playing with Welbeck.
Oh.
And he kind of, yeah, and he kind of, I mean, he's kind of supplanted him as a starter in front of Welbeck.
Hmm.
But it's good to see. You were the one that honestly first brought my attention to him, and I really like this guy. He's really young, but he's a good player, good striker.
He
It was
is
good to see him
young.
get minutes and get on the score sheet.
I
He's
thought he,
very young.
I
Yeah,
thought he was like 22 or so. He's 18 or 19.
19,
Yeah.
19. Yeah, yeah. And he's
Um,
big. He's quite big
Because
too.
I think he had his first start yesterday for Ireland. Um, so I mean, good for him as well. But I
Yeah,
mean,
he's
that
having
is
a heck of a month or two here.
he really is. And
But they do need a striker, and maybe this is the guy.
what not just he can play make. I really don't see a weakness to his game, and for being as young as he is, and to play in a system like Brighton that is, you're not just relying on counter football. You have to have a brain. You have to be able to link up. You have to be able to play people in. You have to hold up play, and make the runs when you need to. He seems to kind of do all of this, and for being as young as he is, that this is definitely a player to keep a watch to keep an eye on. I agree.
Yeah, there could be some talk around him in the summer, maybe leaving. I think he would do well to stay there and just really he can be the starter and he can get a ton of game minutes. I think he's kind of right now you're kind of seeing him start to take over that starting role, and I think he'll kind of cement his spot there. And I hope he stays because he's been fun to watch. And the nice thing is they don't have to play him. if they don't want to, because they do have Welbeck. They have Undav, who
Wh-
surprisingly played in the 10 behind him, and that worked. He scored too.
Uh-huh.
So you don't have to play him either, which is nice because we know young players getting a lot of game minutes sometimes equals injuries, so they can manage his minutes as well.
And I mean, you mentioned how he might be someone that that teams look at. That whole team, including their coach, might be someone that teams look at. I saw something where Chelsea
A lot
fans
of guys.
want De Serbi now, and I'm thinking, not after the Potter stuff. You get your just desserts there. And I actually hope if Chelsea do make a mistake to get rid of Potter in the summer, I don't necessarily know if this will happen or not. The way their fans have definitely soured on him. I think
Yeah.
that'll be a good lesson for a lot of teams. Like I know everyone has big goals of playing or managing, quote unquote big clubs. That'll be like a lesson, I think, where
Yeah.
managers will see how Pato was treated, and just be like, why the hell would I deal with that? Um,
Yeah, because those big clubs expect you to come in and get them right back to like the top four. So, and it's very hard
they
because
spent
you
all
just
this
started.
money, and it's not on your players; it's on other, and
That's
you're
it.
kind of stuck on all these players, and you're stuck on
Yeah,
the weird contracts as well. So it's got to work.
true.
Um,
Yeah,
So this is what they kind of get. But anyways, we'll move on to Sheffield United and Blackburn. This was maybe kind of a game of the weekend. Kind of like sneakingly enough, this one ends 3-2, and kind of caps off with the late goal from Tommy Doyle, 91 minute. And it's a cracker. It's probably from I don't know outside 30 yards. I want to say. And it's kind of nailed in, and Sheffield is able to kind of come back in this game, and good for them. Like they've been having a good season in the championship. I do think they're second, but it's also the team that struggled to beat Wrexham. I remember that they needed a PK save to maybe even
yeah,
beat Wrexham, but then they followed that up with beating Spurs. This is the reason why Spurs aren't in the competition. So good on Sheffield United.
yeah. And they actually, the first leg against Wrexham, well, not the first leg, but they drew, so they had to go back to Sheffield and
Yeah.
play. So I think Wrexham's a hot team. They just ran into like a hot team, and after that, beat Tottenham, which is huge. And I'm googling the championship right now. I just want to make sure second, but yeah, I mean they could be another good team in the Premier League next year. Obviously they're probably going to have to make it through the playoffs. Yeah, Ben, they're in second, but they're 13 points down from Burnley, so
Yeah.
they're definitely going to go into the playoff. And some good teams, man. Blackburn, Luton Town. So
Well, doesn't
we'll see. But
don't the top 2 get in? And then the 3rd spot is for who wins the playoff?
oh, is it top two? Oh, wow. Oh, it is. You're right. I thought it was top one, and so they're only they're 3 points above Middlesbrough.
Ooh,
So yeah, it's
interesting.
tight. It's tight. It's tight. And a
Uh,
game in hand
do you know
for
do you know
Sheffield, though.
that is do you know who coaches Middlesbrough? I think
Oh,
I
is
th
it
I think I'm right.
former player?
It's
Hold
the
up.
former, manager of Sheffield. Um,
Oh, is it?
yeah. So that would be interesting. Um,
Oh, Michael Carrick.
oh wait, shoot. No, that's not who I was thinking
Yeah,
of.
Michael Carrick.
Yeah,
Who are you thinking of?
Carrick's been doing the former manager of Sheffield. Um,
Oh, what's his face? It was what's his face?
I thought he was
Can't
coaching
remember his name.
Middlesbrough. Anyway, yeah, Michael Carrick's gonna be another name that's probably gonna be, uh, someone's probably gonna take a shot on him. If not, if he'll find his way in the EPL. I've heard his name been praised. Um,
Yeah.
I'm kind of embarrassed a little bit here. We'll move on
I'm trying to
to.
figure out
It's a good
who
time
it is.
to move on to Arsenal.
Oh, it's is it Sheffield has Heckenbottom?
No, 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 no. The former I want to say his name was with a Dean. Um, ugh,
A
uh,
D.
just look up the old Sheffield United manager, because
Okay.
he
I
was.
will,
I thought he was at Sheffield. Maybe he got fired or sacked, because when Middlesbrough
was
beat
it Chris Wilder?
Wilder, yeah,
Let's see, where's Wilder? Chris
When they
Wilder.
beat United last year in the FA Cup, I thought he was managing them. But anyways, because that's where isn't that where Zach Steffen is?
Yeah. Okay. He's at Watford. Chris Wilder's at Watford.
Oh, he got moved. Oh, there you go.
Yeah, he was at he was there at
I guess
Middlesbrough.
he
When
didn't
did
do
he
a good
get
job.
fired? Yeah, he must not have. I don't know.
Oh, well. Well, but actually, I don't think Middlesbrough was anywhere close to being. You said third. So Carrick's come in and just completely done a job. So good,
Yeah,
good,
absolutely.
good for him. Anyways, we kind of spent too much time on that. We'll move
Watford's
on.
in 10th too.
We move on to Arsenal and Crystal Palace. This will be the game that you get to kind of like smile a little bit. Goals from Gabriel Martinelli, pretty big for him because I think he was the one that missed the PK in Europa. So good to see him bounce back. Goals from Saka, which I think is fitting as well, and then a goal from Shaka, Granit Xhaka, which I'm going to speak on. He's a little unsung hero in some respects, and then Schlupp kind of gets one to make it a little interesting. And then yeah, after the Schlupp goal, Zaha was actually in on goal and maybe had a chance to make this 3-2, and he hit it wide. And then that was kind of the wake up call that Arsenal needed because Saka was able to get one basically a little bit after that, and this one ends 4-1 for the most part. Arsenal, like you said, were comfortable, and it took a while for the goals to kind of come in. There was a scare here and there. I mean, Zaha was in on goal and forced a pretty good Bramsell save. I think Edouard as well was maybe in on goal, and so Ramsdale was forced to work a little bit. But
Yeah.
after that, Arsenal kind of their football took over, and they were really good. Rex.
Yeah, yeah, it was fun. It was fun to watch, but yeah, the big moment was that Zaha save, and then it almost, well, I guess it was saved onto the post, and then it almost hit the
Could have
back of
it
Ramsdale
could have
for
bounced
an own
back.
goal.
Yeah, it could have bounced back and
Yeah, and
Ramsdale to
that
go in.
that could have changed the game completely. If 10 minutes in, Palace grabbed the lead, that would have been weird to see, like how Arsenal would have coped with that. I think it would have really changed the game. But yeah, after that, Arsenal kind of were pretty dominant for the most part. Palace did have 5 shots on target, so like you said, Ramsdale was worked. But it was nice, and Tierney got in a little bit and had a nice assist, so maybe that will get him more game time, hopefully.
Hmm.
And then Saka had a huge game, couple goals, an assist. I forget what stat it was, but he's, I don't know, the youngest player in a long time to get double digits in goals and assists in the Premier League.
Interesting.
So looking pretty good. And Martinelli might be on his way too, honestly. And then
Hmm.
Trossard played well and got another assist. He's becoming a little bit of an assist master there. So it
Hmm.
was it was good to see. It was a fun game, and Holding came in for Saliba and played fantastic. And obviously, White is in for Tomiyasu. Tomiyasu had surgery this week, so he's out for the rest of the season.
Ooh.
But I don't know about Saliba. It's a back injury, so I don't think it's that bad. But you can at least hopefully rely on Holding for a few games. And I saw something interesting on Twitter. A bunch of people were trying to figure out lineups with Saliba out that involved not playing Holding, and then
I
someone on
was
Twitter was
I
like,
was
"Look,"
struggling with this. Yeah.
but someone on Twitter was like, "Look, he's the third best center back at a big club. If he's not good enough to play, 1 or 2 games to start, then he's not good enough to be at Arsenal." And
Well,
I think that kind of was proven in this one. He played really well, fantastic in his aerial duels, but I think he's going to have to play a little bit more. So we'll see. He kind of sometimes follows up a good performance with kind of a stinker. So we'll
because
see what happens there.
I was personally wondering, do you try Ben White at center back? But then I don't be without Tomiyasu at right back. The only thing I could think of is maybe Saka, which would
Oof.
be it's not probably what you would want to do. So I think you're right. You do have to deal with Holding, and maybe that is kind of the negative is you kind of do see the rotation is going to be a little bit different, and you see like the center back depth is going to be a little off. You
Oh
can't have anything happen to Gabrielle now, but maybe in some respects you only have to worry about 1 week football now. No more Thursday night games, no more traveling. So in a weird way, uh, it's not necessarily great to not be in any more competitions anymore. But in a weird way, maybe this is a good thing for you guys. Um,
yeah,
but
absolutely.
and I think we'll maybe talk about that before even the game is what happened in the midweek. Because Arsenal do lose to Sporting on PKs, and like you said, they lost Tomiyasu and lost Saliba to injuries, so it was costly. Um, and the kind of the weird
Yeah, he
thing
really
was,
was.
uh, it was kind of an interesting and kind of way that Arteta kind of went about the game because he brought on Odegaard, I think, really really late, and Odegaard almost won it in extra time, and Trossard came on and looked pretty good in extra time as well. And so it's not like Arsenal were necessarily didn't necessarily play a bad game. The funny thing here is a player that I was kind of hyping up a little bit, Manuel Ugarte, dominated. He looked really, really good, and then after hyping him up, he also picked up his second yellow, and so Arsenal were able to play down a man, for a little of this, and wasn't able to kinda make it count, but,
Yeah.
let Man United kind of have their Europa fun if that's what they want. I do think this helps you at least stay focused on the league and not having to worry about rotating more players, I think maybe benefits you now.
Yeah, I think so too. But clearly by the lineup, Arteta took this competition seriously because
Yeah.
he got rid of Turner from the mistakes he made, put in
You're
Ramsdale,
right.
Kievor was benched, and he named a pretty strong team. And I mean, you saw the dangers in doing that in cup games because you had some big injuries, and if that does affect them in the Premier League title race, then Arteta will definitely get a lot of stick about playing starters in cups that aren't necessarily that it's not the Champions League. But so I think Arteta would be upset by it because he definitely wanted by the lineup for them to advance. But I think just stepping back and thinking about it, you know, we didn't think we'd be in this position to win the Premier League. So if you win that and nothing else, that's a huge success. I'd much rather win the Premier League and be knocked out than go to Europa League final and let's say lose that and finish second in the Premier League. So yeah, I think it will be it'll hopefully be a good thing. And you got your younger players playing in the competition in the group stages and things like that. So you still got that out of it at the
Yeah. And, obviously, they'll have a taste, for kind of, for a little bit more. And so, yeah, some people kind of, downplaying it a little bit. I think maybe, it was a negative to I mean, you drew City, so that was what it was.
yeah.
And that's the reason why they weren't in the FA Cup anymore. Um, let's
Games.
see, what was I going to say? I guess we'll kind of get started with how the game actually went. Oh, you mentioned Kiwar. I guess that could maybe be the idea. Maybe try Kiwar. But
Could be. Yeah.
he didn't necessarily look that great defending for Sporting in the first game. That basically was why Sporting got one of their goals. And maybe he does feel
Yeah,
like
that makes sense.
holding is a little more I guess game tested. But I'm gonna get into this. There was something that I saw that I did not like, which we'll maybe get to. But like we mentioned, the first couple, the first 20 minutes, I do think the best two chances did come to Palace. Like you see, Saha hit the post and almost hit Ramsdale for their own goal. And then Ramsdale did make a save here. And then I think Edward he was maybe offside, so maybe it doesn't this doesn't really mean anything. But it was a great save by Ramsdale coming on, but the reason why this was close is because Palace were able to get behind Holding. Because what I saw so many times was Holding was standing maybe 8 yards behind uh, Gabriel Margones, and it seemed like they were
Okay.
not
Oh
in.
no.
It seemed like they were not in sync. And the problem with the way Arsenal's been playing lately is they've almost been doing that 2-2-6 kind of thing, and that's really reliant on those two center backs being able to have recovery pace, and I don't think Holding necessarily has that, so that'll be something to
Yeah,
watch.
he does not.
Yeah,
He's good in the air,
like
and he's nice and physical, but he's slow.
Partey can run back and basically makes the back three, but that requires Holding to have a little pace to stop someone 1v1 in front of him. I don't necessarily know if he has that, so we'll see if that
Yeah.
shows up, but we don't have to go into the negatives. We'll start with the first goal because NBC kind of touched on Zaha, and I think they were right to, because you can actually see him sulking before he even gets played the ball, and then Gahey does try to play him the ball, and Zaka's weak and doesn't run aggressively enough to beat Ben White. Ben White does really well here to win the ball, and then you basically see him just kind of moping around and not really doing anything. And Tyreek Mitchell is screwed here because he doesn't know whether to close down on Ben White or stick with Saka. And what happens is he tries to do a little bit of both, and at this kind of level, that means doing neither. And Ben White threads the
Yeah.
ball to Saka. Saka does well to quickly turn and get it out of his feet before sending a ball across the goal, which finds Martinelli. And then Martinelli basically faces up and skates past Joe Ward. It- I This is on Ward, but at the same time, his God given ability is not to be able to he can't do much here. The
Yeah, no,
problem is
he's
you're playing a guy with a snail's pace at fullback, and you see it bite you here. It's a really good turn by Martinelli. It's a good touch and good finish.
absolutely, yeah, great finish, and he's playing really well too. He's I think I forget how young he is too, because he has been playing a lot of games in his young career so far. But he's another young player that could get double digit goals in the Premier League, which would be great to have both wings with 10 plus goals and 10 plus assists.
And it's
Is
hard.
fantastic.
It's hard to find that.
It is.
Yeah, and I've mentioned how I haven't necessarily compared them to old Klopp's Liverpool teams, but the way that that's what Salah and Mane were doing. And you're able to kind of get goals from the wide areas. Not a lot of teams have that.
Yeah.
And so that
Sometimes it's like assist, but not the goals. Yeah.
yes, yes. And you're also able to get it kind of they're able to create on their end, which you don't always kind of see. And
Sure.
you're saying at such a high clip as well. And you mentioned Saka. We'll get to Saka because he gets the second goal, and this is another. I think this is a goal that highlights Granit Xhaka. Interestingly enough, and so I'm going to talk a little bit about this. Because it's kind of small. What he offers is it's small and easy to miss, but I do think it's clear here. So Arsenal are moving the ball around Palace's box for fun here, and even when attacks aren't coming off, they're quickly winning the ball back immediately, keeping pressure on the final third. The ball gets to Zinchenko and from Saka, and then Zinchenko threads a clever ball to Shaka, making a run basically unmarked, and then he crosses the ball in. Then Saka runs kind of the loose ball, passes it to Ben White, who quickly feeds Saka the ball again. And again, it's Zaha. You see Zaha trying kind of a half-hearted stab and missing. And from there, Saka kind of cuts inside and passes it into the net. But Granit Xhaka is providing width here. And so there are a number of times when you actually see Martinelli and Trossard, they're able to have a free role in the attack. And sometimes you're actually able to play them in the middle and what's interesting is Granit Xhaka seems to recognize when to go wide and when not, or when to go forward and not, which we see for the third goal. But this also allows Zinchenko to play in a deeper position where he's not being asked to kind of be that wide outlet. And I think you're seeing this is where Zinchenko operates better as well. And so it's not necessarily it's not going to be something that necessarily pops up at least stats wise, but Xhaka's role, really does kind of make the rest of the team click a little bit, and I think we saw that really in that Bournemouth game when he tried Fabio Vieira instead. Vieira is maybe a little more clever on the ball, but you see what Xhaka offers, with runs off the ball that maybe Vieira doesn't, and these runs are really important.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, they're a well drilled team. Everyone knows where to be. There's certain situations where players can pop up in areas that you wouldn't expect that player position to pop up in. And like you said, like Zinchenko is kind of not necessarily your typical fullback, and he can kind of push up, and Shaka can fill in. Part of the reason why Tierney doesn't play as much is because Tierney's more like a traditional fullback, whereas Zinchenko can actually keep the ball and is very good with the ball at his feet and very good creative passer too. So
Mhm.
you got a lot of options, which is nice. You can kind of tell that Arteta took a lot from his experience under Pep because Pep has the ability to kind of change a lot of things too. And Arteta's been doing that as well, and it's paid off.
I mean, another thing this goal kind of showcases is, like you kind of mentioned it, how confident Arsenal players are at playing these small passes into small windows. Because it's weird when you're watching a game, just from a TV screen, you see almost every team has these kind of opportunities, and you rarely see like teams actually like take them. Obviously, it's a different viewpoint, being able to watch, from camera than necessarily, on game angle.
Yeah.
When the windows are much smaller than they appear, but it's just weird how so many times, like, I'll be, like, yelling at a screen, "Hey, play that pass," like, you can see the spaces there, and because it's so dangerous where, like, if you don't play it off or pull it off, it's a giveaway and maybe a team can kind of counter on you, but you don't see Arsenal giving up counter opportunities nearly as much because they're able to Zinchenko, like, almost, like, plays these, like, kind of passes into sleep, and you see Ben White's able to do this as well. Odegaard not only plays passes, like, for fun, he sometimes does, like, a weird, like a touch, like, he'll, like, stop a ball and then pass it, like, almost like a dribble.
Mhm,
He's gotten good at doing
mhm.
that, and you're it
Yeah.
just all everyone on Arsenal seems to be able to play this way. So
Yeah.
it's almost positionless at times.
Yeah, that's true, and they just play like you said, they play such quick, like, give and goes, quick 1-2s, in tight spaces, they get out of trouble, which is great because a lot of the teams that they play will press them. Not well, some of the teams they play will press them, so you gotta be able to play in tight areas and play quickly, and they've
Yep,
been able to do it so far. And a big reason too for a lot of their success is how good Partey is as a defensive mid. I've seen him sprint back and bail people
absolutely.
out
Yeah.
when Arsenal are getting countered. He's got speed, he's physical, and he's good with the ball. I mean, just he's so good that I really get worried about just keeping him healthy because we are a different team without him, and he is a little bit injury prone, at least in his Premier League days. He wasn't really at Athletic; he didn't really get hurt, but so, he's so good, but with him being so good, I'm always worried he's gonna get hurt. Just because you see how good he is, and then you're like, if we lose, we're in trouble. And he is injury prone, so it's a little bit of a concern, but at least we got some depth there now with Jorginho.
hmm And I mean, you mentioned Party. I'm gonna talk about the third goal with Granit Xhaka, but I'm gonna mention Party as well. So this is a superb goal. But Xhaka's starting position is basically next to Gabriel, the defender. And as Party and Sanjay kind of play a couple 1-2 kind of passes to each other, just kind of keep the ball a little bit, you basically see Xhaka creep up into a pocket that basically no one marks. And it's
Mhm.
in between the center back and fullback. And I think he recognizes that there's a little gap there, and basically he runs through it. And then, without even thinking, Zinchenko recognizes it and plays him the through ball. And then Xhaka basically does a runtime pass to Trossard, and then who quickly feeds Xhaka with the return ball, continuing his run and finishes. But it's interesting is we saw a similar movement versus Fulham. I don't know if you remember, where Zaka had a poor touch, and that kind of killed the chance. But it was a clever 1-2, and he was also kind of making a run as well. But and he gets his legs in order here and finishes. But again, you get a sense of how well Arsenal shape is and how hard it is for teams to handle. But you also get a sense of how fluid this can be because when Shaka goes wide, Martinelli can play in the middle or can play narrow. Martinelli can stay wide and Xhaka can make runs through the middle, or Trossard goes wide and Martinelli goes inside. And you can get a sense of maybe this is how Trossard can play as a false nine and it doesn't necessarily hurt you. But another thing is Xhaka is able to have this kind of offensive role at times because of someone like Party that's able to offer a little security. And I think that's maybe the reason why you're seeing maybe a different Xhaka this season is he's not asked to necessarily be kind of a holding defensive midfielder. He's got a little more freedom
Yes.
to go up when Arsenal have the ball.
Yeah, and I think his stats back that up this year. He's got, a decent amount of goals and assists. So it's working. Yeah, it's working. And just a little bit more freedom, a little less emphasis on Shaka, himself playing. He sometimes he had to be, the only defensive mid, so it's just less pressure on him. The fans, he's won back the fans, obviously, so it's nice, and now he can actually kind of be a little bit more creative. So I'm sure he's enjoying his football right now, just having a little bit more free license to create things, and obviously it's fun to score. So
And it did especially that kind of goal. And then,
yeah,
Palace do make things a little interesting here. It's kind of, Arsenal are able to handle a corner kick. The only thing to kind of touch on here is I thought it was kind of funny because Ben White and Xhaka basically tried to team up, and I think Zaha and basically, Ben White just comes out of nowhere and just boots the ball as hard as he can out of bounds, and they celebrate, and then immediately they concede after celebrating that.
as soon as
Um
they did that, I was like, "We're getting the clean sheet. Look how excited they are," and then bam, corner goal.
'Cause it was one of those it wasn't like a Palace won the first ball either, it was just kind of, it was one of those second balls, and it was kind of, just Slupp was in the right spot, right time, was able to kind of slot it away. And then really the chance that to maybe make this a little more interesting than it was, Zaha was able to kinda get the ball Palace win the ball high up. It was one of the few times when Arsenal did kind of turn it over, and, it seems like Zaha's caught in 2 minds. He's either trying to cross or shoot, and basically he misfires. There was a chance to make it 3-2 with, I think, in the 70th minute. And then
Yeah,
basically a couple minutes later, Arsenal do get the fourth with Saka. And the only reason to touch on here is it's a really good play by Tierney. Tierney comes on for Zinchenko, and he's a good cross into the box. And Shaka, what a finish this was! Just a one
yeah,
time with his left foot. And Shaka's played in the middle here because Jesus has come on at this point, and Jesus is occupying the right wing spot. So again, it's this fluidity, and you can't man mark. It's got to be hell for defenders because how do you stop all this? And
Yeah. So much stuff going on.
yeah, and it's you almost forget what Jesus can offer, and he kind of showed a little bit, and as Shaka as well, or Saka as well. That's kind of be annoying. So
Yeah.
that
Remember when they had Saka, Laka, and Shaka. So it's getting better, but
so I think really kind of the main storyline. I think my first take was how much different Arsenal made Palace look than Man City. I think I mentioned that in the opening. Because Man City were not able to kind of look like this. It looked like Palace kind of went in with the same kind of mindset. Hey, we're going to defend deep, and we'll kind of see what you got. And Arsenal showed them.
yeah, true. It'd be interesting to see what this game would have been with Vieira at the helm, because obviously the interim manager didn't have much time at all. So I wonder
That's fair.
if part of that is Vieira, and the other part might be Lakanga couldn't play against his parent club. Maybe he's been playing pretty well for Palace. Wasn't that great for Arsenal, but he's been playing well for Palace, and he had a good game against City. So maybe that's part of it as well.
That could be.
And then it could just be Arsenal's, much better. I don't know, but I
Well,
still
it
don't
was
think still
the
think City beats Arsenal.
the Tompkins having to be played instead of Anderson was
Yeah.
definitely big.
Oh
You
yeah.
know, you
Definitely.
lost Anderson. I think it was in a warm up.
Yes.
And it was
Yeah.
weird
It
to not see
was.
Chris Richards play instead because I mean before Thompson came back to the team, they said his this was like a couple of weeks ago, for someone. It might have been for Fulham, when they said it was Thompson's first start in over a
Mhm.
year, so he hadn't
Ooh.
played, and I don't necessarily know if that was for injury or not. I mean, he's an older player, so
Oh
he's
yeah.
not featured a ton. And in that Fulham game, he got a red card. I remember that he got two yellows. And so it was
Ooh.
weird to see Tompkins back. He didn't have any kind of pace, which Saka basically kind of owned him for that third goal. And,
Mhm.
the Ward thing played over Klein. I don't know if Klein was necessarily injured. Klein's always kind of had injury issues. When he was at Liverpool, he
Yeah.
had issues like that. And it's kind of where that goes back to the recruitment side. Palace were kind of let down by their defense. You can defend all you want. You still that still takes your defenders being good. And,
Oh yeah.
in this case, that didn't necessarily happen. 15 shots and 5, on target, for Arsenal versus, 9 shots and 5 on target for Palace, and Palace did have 2 big chances. So this
Yeah.
could
Yeah.
have been a little bit different. If maybe one of those kind of goes in, maybe this is a different game.
Absolutely.
Um,
Especially that first Zaha chance went in
but
10 minutes like into the
mhm,
game. Who knows what would happen?
and Arsenal kind of Arsenal always have 500 passes and 87% accuracy.
Yeah.
So we'll stick with Arsenal. Like you mentioned, you getting goals from the two wide players is definitely big, but I think maybe the kind of the take I wanted to bring up with you is, and I maybe got caught up in this as well when it happened, is a lot of people kind of I didn't necessarily laugh, but I thought it was maybe a missed opportunity when Arsenal decided to go for Trossard instead of Mudryk, and
Mhm.
you're seeing what Trossard's offered to Arsenal, and Trossard's proven to be fair.
Yeah.
And it's not like
Absolutely.
he's like 35. I think he's like 29.
29.
Um,
Yeah.
and Mudryk's kind of struggling a little bit to impact a little bit at Chelsea. And so far, it seems maybe in future seasons, maybe this will be a different take. But at least right now, that seemed to be the better decision.
Yeah, I think so, honestly. And yeah, you bring up a good point. Because it was a little disappointing, but I was kind of like, well, Trossard's Premier League proven, and he's been having a good season at Brighton. So there's not an adjustment time to the and thankfully he didn't need one because they immediately basically needed him when Nketiah took that knock,
Yep.
and they had to play him in a position he's not necessarily used to as false nine as well. So it's good that I think it ended up being good that he was used to the Premier League because he had to play. As soon as he got his bag set in London, he had to play. So
And you saw something that I've been kind of critical a little bit with that's this false nine idea is on the third goal you see why maybe this can work, and it's because of the run that Xhaka made. So like Trossard is actually the creator here, and he has a really good ball, but he's able to play the ball to someone, and that's Granit Xhaka making the run. So you can talk about Saka, Martinelli, which we have Odegaard, obviously Trossard. You can praise them week to week, which we've done. I've kind of talked up a little bit about Shaka, and I think I'll stick with that because he weirdly reminds me a lot of Jordan Henderson when Henderson
Mhm.
was like, when Henderson still had his legs and engine. But in some cases, that's maybe a disservice because I do think he's a better technical player than Henderson ever was. He doesn't just necessarily look to hoof it. And it seems like Xhaka's role is really it's really quite good. It's maybe run to maybe close off gaps on defense, but recognize when someone is out of position. Maybe run either forward or run to the wing to kind of occupy it. And another thing too is when he gets out on the wing, he's got a good cross on him.
He
I never.
does.
And he basically he kind of forces one of those. I think he forces the second goal with Xhaka with a really good cross into the box. So the role he offers is pretty unique.
It really is. Yeah, and a lot of players on Arsenal, they do have those unique roles that we've been talking about, and it's part of what makes them so fun to watch, but also hard to beat.
And another thing to kind of touch, so we mentioned how a couple of the guys are worth praising. It almost feels like every single one of these, I mentioned that too. Every single one of these players have like the same technical level and ability to kind of handle being pressed, collect passes, hit hard to them, and collect 50-50 balls with ease. But one player in particular that I do think needs to kind of be highlighted because of what happened yesterday with Ozil announcing his retirement is I was watching some old clips of Madrid on the weekend before the Clasico, and I didn't realize it before, but it does feel like watching those clips of Odegaard, I mean, of Ozil back in like 2012, 2013. He looked like Odegaard. He looks like Odegaard now. And it is kind of interesting
Yeah,
how Arsenal have been able to kind of get him from Madrid. Madrid maybe messed up here a little bit because I was watching him on Sunday and I was like, the way he moves is similar. Now, and it is funny because Ozil did end up at Arsenal. And the only thing to maybe say is you haven't seen the high assist clips yet, because I think Ozil almost had 20 assists in 2015. He's one of the
yeah, it
most
was ridiculous.
creative players in the league. Like he had a like
Yeah,
Kevin De Bruyne type
you'd
season.
rather have an assist than a goal. Yeah, yeah,
And so
assists were his goals basically.
you could still see Odegaard end with like you said, double digit goals and assists. I would like to maybe see him tack on a little bit more, but it is interesting how they found a way to almost kind of move on because it is funny how the marriage didn't necessarily end well with Ozil towards the end with
Oh,
Arsenal. And
yeah, he didn't want to leave,
it
and
almost seems they found his heir apparent, weirdly enough.
yeah, I think so. I think I mean, he potentially has a chance to be better than Ozil, which is saying something because if you look at Ozil's stats, and obviously won a World Cup for Germany and won a bunch of stuff in Madrid, so it's yeah, it's quite a lot saying that. But he does, I think Odegaard does have the ability to possibly be better than Ozil. We'll see, or his Arsenal career will be better, probably.
And
But
what's funny is him being with Arteta than being a Pep, I think helps him too because I don't think he would have this kind of freedom that he has. Now, Pep's given
that's
Kevin De
true.
Bruyne that kind of freedom, but
Yeah, yeah,
Kevin De Bruyne has kind of earned that in the bank a little bit, also for being as young as he is, and he's already, Arteta's already made him captain.
Odegaard.
I
Yeah,
mean, yeah.
yeah. He did. Yeah, he was. I mean, he was captain when he was like 15
Mhm.
in the Norway Premier League. So like adults, he was captaining as a 15-year-old. So he's kind of like been groomed for this role since he was a kid.
And again, like I guess like the only I don't want to say like a negative thing to say is you would like to see just a little more. You would like to see that leap up. But as far as just
Yeah.
the way that he glides on the ball, and he's absolutely unpressable, and just you would like to see him maybe be as aggressive as Kevin De Bruyne at times. But another thing to kind of mention because I was kind of playing this a little bit with Jeremy is another player that Real Madrid and Arsenal have kind of traded over the years is Danny Ceballos, and it seems like Madrid maybe
Yeah.
made a mistake by picking Ceballos over Odegaard because
Yeah. I think
it seems Arsenal maybe benefited from that, or
yeah.
Arsenal made the right decision out of those two players.
Yeah, I think they did. And Ceballos kind of like struggled on his second term loan with Arsenal. So maybe that kind of helped Arsenal make the decision, but it definitely was the right one so far.
And for Palace, I think my takes I kind of wanted to highlight is I think Eze needs to start games for Palace. I don't think. I don't think they're good enough to not to have one of the better creators just kind of benched. I don't think it's necessarily a defensive thing because I just watched Elise and Zaha not do any kind of defensive work without the ball. I think Chris Richards needs
Yeah,
to start over Tompkins, and Milhovovic in 2023 is not good. Because
yeah,
he
I would
doesn't
agree
he
with
also
that.
really doesn't have legs. The midfield was like Milhovic and I guess Decore, which wasn't Decore
Oh yeah,
can run a little bit, but yeah, that was rough. Like you said, maybe it'll be better when you get Lakanga back. Lakanga wasn't able to play obviously because of Arsenal, so maybe there's some of that, but I don't really know where to begin with Palace because it started like you said, it started off pretty decent for Zaha, and then it almost looked like they stopped playing a little bit after that.
yeah, I think so too. Yeah, it looked like they kind of gave up, which is never a good thing.
And that's maybe all we can say. The area news obviously in the back. You sometimes see um, teams kind of rally around like a new manager bump, and we saw the opposite here. Um, and so
Yeah, just it was tough matchup too for that, and Arsenal kind of already learned from about like the new manager bump with Deitch at Everton with losing to that. So
Mhm. And so, this was Saturday was Christmas Day for Arsenal fans because of what happened in the other game as well. So, keeping with the North London, I guess geological location, we move on to Tottenham and Southampton, and this one's ends 3-3 with a goal from Pedro Porro, then Jay Adams in the second half, Harry Kane, then Perisic to make it 3-1. I was watching this game live, and I literally ended up turning it over to Brentford and Leicester. That was a mistake on me
mhm.
because nothing happened in the Brentford Leicester game once I turned to it other than a red card. And then Walcott's able to get one back, make it 3-2, make it a little bit more interesting. And then out of nowhere, Ward Prowse is able to basically make this a draw 3-3 with a PK. And the only thing that makes that surprising is it's the first time that he's able to convert a PK this season.
Wow, that's a crazy stat because he's got all those free kick goals, but not a PK. Interesting.
He missed two. He had missed 2, leading up to that, and,
Wow.
the PK he scores is it was versus, an old teammate, Fraser Foster. So I was
All right.
going into it because I once I saw that, Palace actually had I saw the PK live, but what I did was I closed my eyes because the first thing I thought was, I thought about Harry Kane and, uh, Luiz in
Oh yeah, yeah,
in
yeah.
France and England. Like when you go up against a guy that you faced against, sometimes you maybe try a little too hard, and he hit a perfect PK. To be fair to him,
Yeah.
he
Oh,
did
he
it.
was brilliant.
It was hard and into the corner. Um, and I think then maybe the lead off story for Spurs was kind of it was just an unfortunate day to be honest because you lost Richarlison to injury just really early into the game. Southampton had some injuries as well. And I thought it was going to be maybe Perisic and Kulusevski coming back to be heroes, and instead uh, and we'll lead off with something else. I think we'll maybe start with the Conte quotes,
Yeah,
because
there's some good ones.
I think he even did he say this before the game? Just
I couldn't. Yeah, it was either before or after. I couldn't.
but the weird thing he kind of does this a little bit. He does some rants and he does his he does his tantrums. But I was trying to think. Spurs haven't necessarily spent as much on City or Man United levels, but
Right,
they've spent in the top five. And when you see what Brighton's been able to do, it doesn't seem you have to spend 300 million every window.
right,
Um,
absolutely.
they've spent less than Chelsea, and they're above Chelsea. So I don't necessarily know if it's necessarily the spending. I think it's the recruitment. And another thing too is you're knocked out of Champions League to AC Milan. You've spent a whole lot more than AC Milan has in the last
Yeah.
two
Oh
seasons.
yeah.
So
Oh yeah, definitely.
I think it's
Yeah, it's not. They're not playing like they're not paying for the stadium anymore.
yeah.
So yeah, they did buy some players. I mean, Charleston wasn't cheap at all.
And they brought in when everyone thought they were broken, couldn't do anything. They brought in Kulishevsky and brought in a Betancourt
Mhm.
last January. And obviously, you missing Betancourt, which we keep saying. But I do think this is on Conte for not being able to adjust.
Mhm.
So and it's not necessarily just his back three system because we basically see formations aren't really what they used to be. You can sometimes see teams playing a back, quote unquote, a back four, but you have the central defensive midfielder kind of go backwards and basically forms a back three. Liverpool do this with Fabinho.
Mhm.
Um, so I don't necessarily think it's that. I think it's you're seeing an issue where you struggle at a high level when you can't play a high defensive line when you have very slow center backs. And I think to be elite, it requires ball playing center backs, one that can handle being pressed, that don't just hoof it up out of nowhere. But also that can handle a defensive line. And like the issue, Eric Dyer is not that level. Romero,
No.
it did not look great versus Southampton, and neither did Langley. And I think that's maybe been the issue is you've done some recruiting a little bit on the offensive side. You brought in Danjuma, who you rarely even play. You brought
Yeah.
in Richarlison, so and you already had Kane, Kulishevsky, and Son before that, and you just look at who you have at the back end, and you've done nothing over the last few seasons, and this is showing up again.
Yeah. And I mean, this summer might be you could lose Kane as well. So yeah, I don't know.
Really,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's gonna be interesting. It's gonna be another interesting summer. It always is. But yeah, they could lose Kane because Kane might want to leave to win some trophies finally.
Well, the only maybe the best thing for Spurs there is the only spot is probably United, where he'd be in a better spot to quote unquote win trophies. And I don't know if
Yeah.
United want to go with him or look at maybe Victor Osimhen at Napoli. We'll maybe get to that later.
Yeah.
Um, but it's not just Kane. The marriage with Conte does seem to be coming to an end. And one thing I was maybe wondering if Chelsea do make the mistake to move off Potter, I was saying it wouldn't be the worst idea to go get him. And it's
Yeah.
weird because Potter hasn't necessarily had his best stint at Chelsea. I think it would be a different pressure. It's still a big club. I think he would work better at Spurs. To be honest, he'd have a different budget. He'd have different expectations. I think it would work. But
Yeah. It'd be interesting for sure.
yeah, and to kind of do a little I guess plug in or kind of just say something that I've personally wanted to see for a while is Potter's had all these issues with XG and not necessarily being able to find a striker. I want to see Potter with Harry Kane and just see if that works.
Ooh,
So
that would be interesting.
that is just me because I wanted that's why I wanted him to maybe coach England. I mean,
No. Yeah. Yeah.
Spurs start with Romero Davies and Longley at the back line. Pedro Porras starts again, and he scores. So that's good. Hoiberg and Skip that didn't necessarily work, and then Ben Davies, started at the other fullback spot, and he had to be subbed off. And then Richarlison had to be subbed off as well after about 6 minutes. And then Kulishevsky came in. Kulishevsky had a good game. For Southampton, Southampton had some issues as well. It started with Walker Peters and Bednarik. Bednarik wasn't able to go. Belakacep started. He wasn't able to go, so he had to be subbed off. They played Maitland-Niles at center back again, but it wasn't in the back five or whatever. It was still a 4-4-2. And the interesting here was the midfield was Armstrong, Stuart Armstrong, James Ward-Prowse, Roman Lavia, and Elianusi. And then it was Walcott and Adams kind of up top. So you didn't see any of the January signings make a start, which I thought was interesting. But you did see them come on in the second half, and they were good in the second half.
Yeah. Yeah. They were really great, and that that might be something he can kind of do. Is bring those players on in the second half for a little boost.
I really because I'm gonna get to maybe the third goal. I'm gonna get to something that there's a little play between Siko Mara and Sulemana that I really
Mm.
liked. But I mean, the first big chance I think went to Southampton, and it's one of those things where I thought maybe the story of the game was going to be another instance of Walcott coming back to kind of help Southampton, the Moorhead club. It would have been a really good story, but just too many times he's kind of screwed up when it's come to end product because we saw this for Man United. He had a couple like 1v1s that he screwed up on.
True.
Son just kind of miscontrols the ball, kind of close to the goal. Ward Prowse has a few efforts on goal that went wide as well, and then Walcott had so there's lovely hold up play by Che Adams. He finds Elyounoussi, who plays a clever through ball to Walcott, basically streaking up the field past the Spurs back line, and Walcott just can't beat Foster. And I was like, oh no, this is what happened against
Same.
Man United as well.
Same old. Same old.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And from a Spurs perspective, though, this is the problem in a nutshell. Is you don't have defenders that can play high defensive back line. It's really easy to get behind you, which we saw Leicester do a few weeks ago. And
Yeah.
then
True.
to be honest, it was kind of it was a wild game where it almost felt like Southampton were the team on the front foot, and then Spurs out of nowhere get one very late in the first half by Pedro Porra. He had a couple of these efforts before, that basically he was getting the ball and just kind of lashing it over the goal. So you're like, well, when he gets the ball, it's not going to be that big of an issue. And then he connects on this time. But this comes from after a really good spell of possession from Spurs. And it's probably the best in the game. The ball is just moved around pretty well. It's recycled by Longley. He finds a really good pass upfield to Son, who kind of dropped into a little pocket of space unmarked. And you saw Son starting to kind of cook a little bit before this goal, and he had a wonderful ball, kind of splitting everyone to find Pedro Porro, making him run upfield, and it's completely unmarked. I think it's Peru. Peru is marking maybe Kane or someone. He's not able to recognize that run, and it did, and it hits a really good finish by him, and it almost felt like this was maybe coming a little bit. Son was, like I said, Son was kind of getting in good areas, and it's really the first time that Southampton kind of switched off because no one's marking Porro, and it pays.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And it was a good performance by Porro. He's taken a little bit of time to settle. He had a couple really bad games when he first got there.
Yeah.
But this is something he can build on. I know it's drop points from winning position, but some of the players at least can take heart in their individual performance at the very least.
Well, I don't necessarily put necessarily this on Porro. But the way that they played in the second half, we'll get to some issues that I think I have with Spurs. But really, the way that they scored this goal and it happened right before halftime, I thought Southampton were going to come out and play an egg, and the opposite happened. I mean, within the first minute in the second half, Che Adams gets a goal, and pretty much what happens here is Spurs are the one that come out kind of sleeping a little bit, and Spurs are just kind of leaving Roman Lavia completely unmarked to receive a pass, and then he basically does a ball. He threads a perfect pass upfield to Walcott, who again beats the Spurs back line. I think it's Longley here, and Walcott's able to finally offer a little end product with a really good through ball driven across the goal, across the 6 yard line that Jay Adams is able to kind of finish off, and it's a very brave finish by Adams. And basically his knee like ricochets off the post. But the thing to touch on here is the ball that Roman Lavia plays. So one, he's able to quickly turn on the ball, and two, he's able to play just a really good pass to someone's feet. Streaking outfield. This is something that Spurs don't have at the moment, and it's coming from
Yeah.
the middle of that of the area, and Oliver Skip in that situation is probably going to try to play a ball over the top, which is harder for someone to kind of run onto and control. I don't think Horberg's gonna try to play this kind of pass, and you're seeing that show up a lot as well.
Yeah, true. Hoiberg, yeah, probably would not play that type.
And then Spurs start to actually kind of take over a little bit. But what's weird is this comes basically from Southampton having the majority of the ball, and then the Spurs kind of getting a couple breaks. And it's really the first real involvement from Kulishevsky in the game. So he gets the ball from Pedro Porro, he cuts inside and plays a really good cross, kind of curling towards goal. The Harry Kane, it basically out jumps Matt Linares and Walker Peters. Um, Again, Matt Linares at center back. That is what it is. It's a
Yeah.
really good ball by Kulishevsky here, though. I mean, the quality of the ball is inch perfect, and just Harry Kane just has to jump up and just get any kind of contact on it, and he does.
Yeah, brilliant goal.
And then they get the third. This one 3-1. This is when I basically turned it off, because again it's just kind of recycled possession from corner kick. We saw this a lot in a lot of these games where people scored off corner kicks, but not necessarily like the first ball kind of looped in. It was being able to just keep possession up there. But there's another good ball whipped in by Kulishevsky. Good delivery, and the delivery kind of forces Southampton to really defend this hard, and they're unable to get the rebound. The rebound falls to Perisic, and he's first to the loose ball, and it's a wonderful volley. Kind of bounces off the ground, and the bounce is what beats Bazunu.
Oh yeah, those are so hard to save too because the bounces it just catches you by surprise.
And then Southampton do make it 3-2. It's a similar story for the third Spurs goal. So it's recycled corner kick that Spurs aren't really able to clear away. Ward Prowse is able to basically get the ball kind of free down the wing, and then he tries a second cross into the box. Mara wins the header and then heads it to Walcott, who's completely unmarked around the 6 yard area. And then Walcott's offering a little in product here with the finish. But it's another case of a team getting caught, I think, watching the ball, and the opposing teams not really recognizing where the actual players are, because everyone's kind of focused on the ball, and Kane and Dyer basically run towards the goal, and then everyone leaves Walcott alone. If
Yeah.
if Eric Dyer doesn't leave and run towards the goal, I think he's maybe there able to block Walcott. So
Hmm.
that is what it is. I mean, Conte is also annoyed how the corner kick comes, and he's right to because it looks like they have Suleimana kind of pinned on the corner flag, and he's got nowhere to go, and yet he's able to basically just thread an easy ball to Seiko Mara, and then Mara is able to find Ward Prowse, and then Ward Prowse finds Matt Niles, who basically is free unmarked as well, and Matt Niles has a shot to test Foster, and that's the reason why they get the corner kick. But Suleimana also does
Mm.
well after the corner kick because after finding he finds Mar, basically before the corner kick, he's able to kind of get the pass there to get out danger. And it's also he gets the ball, he controls it with his knee, and he's able to get the ball quickly out to Ward Prowse after the corner kick's kind of recycled, and Ward Prowse is able to get that cross off as well. So I mean, Suleimana does well here.
Yeah, he's a good player. You've highlighted him a couple shows in a row, whether or not like he sometimes gets taken off too early, and he's like playing pretty well when he gets taken off, or maybe he gets the hook early. But it seems like he is a good player, but just needs more time, more playing experience. But he's someone. I mean, they need some offensive players, Southampton. So
Yep.
there's someone there that they could possibly start putting in some goals and assists for them for
I think
sure.
Sekou Mara as well. Now it's good to see
Sycamore too,
It's
yeah.
good to see Che Adams back. I don't necessarily think Paulo Nacho is necessarily working, but I'd like to see Sekou Mara get some looks if he can. Um, but this game ends 3-3 because, and this is also on a corner kick. This is Southampton's 10th corner kick of the game, which is worth kind of saying how you
Yeah,
don't really think about that when you're playing the 20th team in the league. You think it maybe if a team kind of draws you, you're the one that has the ball. You're the one that's basically trying to put all this pressure, and they're the team that kind of counters on you. Spurs were the one trying to play counter ball. Spurs were the one being pinned back. And you give up all these corner kicks, it ends up kind of costing you because while it's not the first ball that happens, it's a loose ball, and Matt Niles is quicker to run to it than Sarr breaks him down. Like Sarr, it's almost doesn't really look like there's a lot of contact, but it's hard to can necessarily overturn. It's because of the on-field decision that they don't necessarily overturn it. But corner kicks are risky. It's not necessarily easy to defend. You give them up at your own will, and it costs you here.
yeah. If you give up ten corners too, the odds of scoring a goal off one of those, just gets higher and higher with the more corners you're conceding.
And it's weird. I noticed this with Arsenal, and it kind of happened here as well, where everyone is kind of focused on having all these bodies to defend that first ball in. Southampton had two guys that were completely unmarked, basically the top of the box, which was interesting as well. I guess the
That is
idea
interesting.
is you're so worried about that first ball kind of in you're not you maybe you feel like you can handle it after that, but it kind of cost them here a little bit. And Spurs do end up nearly winning it. There's like a header that basically goes over the bar, and that's basically the last kick of the game. But I thought the the thing that was interesting here is we mentioned the Ward Prowse thing. I thought it was really good by the manager of Southampton because I remember when they beat Chelsea in like his first game, he was basically sitting back and just kind of hanging on for dear life. And what he did here is he kind of took the game to not only did he take the game to Spurs, he made like three offensive subs. And what's weird is he only had one window to do this because
Oh yeah,
of the
yeah.
two injuries the two injuries to his back line early in
That's
the
right.
game. So
That's right. I forgot about
he
that.
picked his time to do it, and he made 3 offensive now, obviously, you're losing 2 goals, but he could have tried to just be like, "Hey, let's not be embarrassed." And instead, he went for it and
True.
got rewarded for it.
Yeah, I like that. Hopefully more managers will take a little bit from that and will go for some games and get some points.
I mean, the stats here are wild. S Southampton, beat Spurs in XG, 2.5 to 2.27. Shots are 19 and 7 versus Spurs 17 and 3 on target. And Spurs did have 3 big chances, and one hit the woodwork, but possession was 50-50. And passes were about 388 for Southampton, 85% accuracy, and Spurs were 377 and 84. This is not what you would expect between what Spurs are 5th or 4th in the table versus the 20th spot in the league. This is wild.
Yeah, true. True. Yeah, it was crazy. They really did. They did go for it, and they weathered like that early storm. They were down 3-1. They kind of weathered that and just kept pushing and pushing and pushing, and they got rewarded. It was good to see.
And we'll touch on a little bit on Southampton because I do think the story was going to be Perisic and Porro kind of coming on and maybe basically kind of helping out and being heroes because the way that Conte kind of plays, those wingbacks have to be so crucial. And it is maybe a good thing that Porro is working out because something that also happened on the weekend was Jed Spence put on a wonder class versus Mbappe on the weekend.
Yeah,
We've kind of mentioned that as well, but and Kulu, Son, and Kane, were being part of the goals again, so that's maybe something to be positive about. But the center back group is trash, and it's
yeah,
whether it's Romero,
yeah,
Longley, Dyer, Davidson Sanchez, or Tangala. I don't see anyone that you would think anyone that's like a top 8 team would be like, "Oh, I'll take them." And I think you're
yeah. I
maybe
completely
seeing
agree.
that. Yeah.
It's a bunch of like slow center backs.
And it was just weird how Spurs went into the game just they were sitting back and soaking pressure, and they're just like, "We'll play off the counter." And again, it's versus a bottom team. It was weird.
Yeah, it really was kind of weird. I don't know. Tottenham's been kind of you don't know what team's going to show up sometimes, and or what team's going to show up per half.
And Conte was maybe blindsided by the Richarlison injury. That's fair enough. But Kulishevsky came on, and he actually led to a couple of these goals. And I don't necessarily think this happens because of Kulishevsky coming on instead of Richarlison. So
Yeah, yeah. Neither do I. No. Yeah, because he played pretty well. I mean, it, yeah, and Richarlison isn't going to really come back and defend, so he's not going to necessarily prevent those 3 goals from being scored either.
And we kind of mentioned it a little bit with Roman Lavia, because one thing that definitely pops up every time I watch Spurs play is when their defenders have the ball, they can't really pass the midfielders to progress the ball upfield. So like the outlets of the wingbacks are maybe trying to find Harry Kane somewhere where he's forced to drop really, really far deep and be basically nowhere near the goal, essentially, or nowhere near
Right.
center backs. Oh, maybe Son can kind of do it as well, but I think it hurts them in build-up. I think over time it becomes kind of predictable a little bit, and it's hard for them. This is maybe another reason why they're struggling to keep the ball as well. You can't if anyone can press anyone that has, I guess, the will to do it can maybe press their center backs into just kind of going long and losing the ball.
Yeah, that's true.
And I used to think maybe that was like a Louise problem. With maybe it was because of the keeper, and I think it's the center backs and the midfielders. Um,
Yeah, I think you're right for sure. Yeah,
and to I mean we said enough on negative about Spurs, but maybe one thing to be positive about is I think Harry Kane is on 20 goals now for the season, and to be anywhere close to 20 and maybe anywhere close to qualifying for the Champions League, I think it showcases just how good individually he's been this season, and he's obviously been overshadowed by Holland. In some respects, I
definitely.
think it's been a more impressive season than Holland.
Yeah, I mean, I could definitely get behind an argument that type of argument for sure because I mean, Holland just has so much talent around him, and they're just constantly sending in balls to him. He's up high. He doesn't necessarily drop back deep like Kane does.
Mhm.
So yeah, I would agree, and it kind of papers over that defense. Kane's goals kind of he puts the team on his back. I think more than Holland does. I would say.
And for Southampton, you can't talk about them without talking about Roman Lavia, which I don't necessarily know if he's one of theirs. The city might even have a
City.
buyback clause, which is not fair
Yeah,
because this guy
yeah,
looks incredible. Just
yeah,
not only what he offers on the ball, he obviously he showed what kind of passing he can do. He looks like he can handle being pressed. He's really good at wiggling out of danger. He's also really good at winning the ball off. He's physical as well, but uh, maybe the kind of the hair is Walcott. He gets
yeah.
maybe the assist, kind of creating the chance, and he gets the all important goal. And I was worried a little bit because he was since he's come into the lineup, he's been creating chances. I think he even drew a PK versus Leicester. That was when like
Mm,
Ward Prowse like missed a PK. But it's a good story, I think. He went to Arsenal kind of young. Southampton like lost this generational talent to a different London club, and he's kind of come in, and maybe they can kind of lead on him to kind of pull them out of something, some kind of miracle.
Yeah, maybe it was vintage Walcott, which was it was good to see, and yeah, maybe he can take some of this form and apply to other games because I mean Southampton did bottom, but last four games it's only one loss, so it's a
Mhm.
little bit they can build on a little bit of this point by point maybe if they have to, and obviously it's so tight at the bottom that like a one win and if West Ham and Bournemouth lose, then boom, Southampton's probably out of they're out of the relegation zone. So
And that is maybe the only negative, I guess you would say here is it is just a point in the end. And you've taken points back off, Man United and Spurs back to back. But in the bigger picture, 1 point isn't going to be enough to kind of cut it in these games.
yeah, yeah, they're gonna have to get wins, and they I guess they're gonna have to beat teams that are like play like they do against the top. Play your Leicester Cities like you play Tottenham, and get
And that,
get some wins. And if you get a point against a top 4 or 5 clubs, great. But if you can't beat the teams that are around you in the relegation, and it all
another thing, it was really timely. They needed this because they played Brentford in the midweek and looked as lifeless I think I've seen a team look, to be honest. And basically, I think that actually Roman Lavia got lucky not getting a red card because he did like the Casemiro thing.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
that's right.
but like you said, they are starting to get at least you're not necessarily losing games, and you can maybe kind of pull that. Maybe you can rally around that a little bit because it is a little timely. Because another thing that's interesting is a lot of these teams at the bottom are starting to get some wins. Like Everton, is kind of creeping up a little bit, and
Mhm.
it's not necessarily. I think they are like what 3 points away from safety. Maybe it's only two. So they're still in this.
Well, it's three, but two they'd be tied, but their goal differential is so much worse than like Leicester or West Ham that
Ah, true.
they'd still be in that. Yeah, but
And I
3 points would take them clear out.
think they've played a number of games. They've played maybe more 28 games when some teams around them have only played like 26 or 27, which isn't
Yeah,
necessarily
West
great.
Ham 26, Bournemouth 27. So yeah, that's not good potentially.
I mean, the other thing to kind of say is just weird how they were able to. This wasn't them just defending in a box all game. And we mentioned Siko Mara and like Sulemana. I'd like to see them kind of. They don't necessarily have to start. Stuart Armstrong and Elliot Udise aren't necessarily bad players, or Che Adams either. But I would like to see them kind of get a little more of a role. And the heart of the team is Walker Peters, Lavia, and James Ward-Prowse, and maybe Walcott. So it
Yeah,
is it is interesting. So that is that
it was
is maybe it.
hard for a point.
No,
Yeah,
and let's see. They are at the bottom with 23 points. Let's see. Oh, the win. Does the win take them above Leicester? Oh, a win would have taken them above Leicester.
a win would, yeah, by a point.
Yeah. And so we move on to Chelsea and Everton. This one also kind of surprised me a little bit. I was actually Andrew was visiting, and so we were actually playing. We were playing FIFA instead of watching this. And shame on me. This ended up being actually really good because I thought this was going to be a dud. Another thing that's kind of interesting is this was the theme of the week was this was who you played in the first week in the season week in
Mm.
the EPL. Uh, or
Ah,
because Arsenal went. The first game was Crystal Palace. I remember that, and I remember the Everton's first game was versus Chelsea. When
oh,
Mina ended up getting hurt, and Liverpool were supposed to play Fulham,
interesting.
and Liverpool played Fulham in the first week in the season as well. So
Oh, interesting.
this one went a little bit differently than that one. I think Chelsea ended up winning. It was like a late 1-0 game. I forget who ended up even scoring, but maybe it might have been like Mason Mount. This one is a lot more exciting. But the first goal
Oh yeah.
came from Yao Felix, and then Decor was able to draw it, and then Havertz gets the PK. I thought that was pretty much going to be it. And then Ellis comes on, kind of a shocking fashion, and to kind of get a point in the 90th minute. And so
Mhm.
Chelsea's lineup started off with a 3-4-3 with Fofana, Koulibaly, and Bhattachelye. And then James was back, and then we saw Enzo, Kovacic, and Chilwell, and then Havertz, Felix, and Pulisic. Pulisic gets to start. And I'm gonna get to this. I like this. I liked what I saw from Pulisic.
Me too. Yeah, I was glad he's back too.
And I've got Connor Cody for Pulisic. That's not right. Who came on? Oh, Conor Gallagher came on for Pulisic.
Oh
Ru-
yeah, yeah, Gallagher.
Ruben Loftus-Cheek came on for Kovacic. I think Potter screwed up on the subs. Chukwuemeka came on for Felix, and then Chalobah came on for Fofana, and I think that was a incredible decision. And then
Mhm.
Everton kind of went with Coleman, Keane, Tarkowski, and Godfrey. One thing that's interesting is Michael Keane's been playing in these games over Connor Cody. Connor Cody's been available, and maybe that's been a little dice specialty because it's worked out so far. Weirdly
Yeah,
enough.
it must be a Dutch specialty. Yeah, it has worked. Yeah.
And then Arobi, Decore, Gaye, Onana, McNeil, and then Damari Gray, and then Gray went off for Sims. But let's see. And Mikalenko came on for Seamus Coleman, and that ended up actually Mikalenko has a role in the second goal as well. But the first goal that Chelsea do score, Yao Felix, this comes late. But it also comes with Felix had actually had a couple of these chances that Pickford had been able to save. Pickford had a good game as well. Um,
Yeah.
but this just comes with like a big switch by Enzo Fernandez, who picks out Chilwell making a run forward. You see what Chilwell offers this Chelsea side. You also see Enzo starting to kind of cook a little bit for the Chelsea. And then he tries to kind of cross the ball in. It's blocked off. The rebound falls to Felix, who does well to collect it and then fires the shot in far post. But the interesting thing here is Felix aims for the legs. He gets it through the defender's legs, and maybe Pickford kind of sees it late. Um, but
I think he did. Yeah.
it's a really good pickup by Enzo. And then it's also because Chilwell is able to kind of offer that wing spot. Felix or whoever's kind of playing there is able to kind of play a little more in central areas, kind of in more danger areas a little bit more, and you kind of see that work out.
Yeah, absolutely.
And let's see, before Enzo does the switch, you see Fofana and Felix kind of do a little 1-2 together. And what this does is it kind of drags Decore to move off Enzo to run towards Fofana. And it kind of gives Enzo, when he gets the ball, there's no one around him to receive the ball. So he's able to look up and no one's able to rush him on the pass. So that kind of helps out as well. And then there were a couple chances here, one by Everton with Michael Keane, and then Chelsea with Kovacic. Um, I want to highlight this moment because what I saw from Pulisic. So this starts with Fofana making a really good run with the ball to advance it upfield, and then after he gets it poached off him, Felix is there to collect it and he passes it out wide to James, who's next to Havertz, kind of looking confused. So Havertz is on the wing,
Mhm.
just kind of Havertz being useless. James then looks up to cross the ball, and he's able to find Chilwell, who's able to lay it off to Felix, making kind of a recovery run. And then the ball eventually finds Kovacic, who hits the shot over the bar. But I want to highlight this because while Felix is trying to play make, trying to drop deep and play make, Havertz is next to James, kind of, tying his shoes. Uh, James has to cross the ball in, and Pulisic makes a run that tries to split the center backs. So, and that's basically, and it's because of Pulisic's run that drags someone over, and that leaves Ben Chilwell open. And the thing that's interesting here is, unfortunately, this is the last we see of Pulisic before, Potter basically subbed him off for Gallagher. But we've started to see Pulisic not necessarily because he plays this way. He played this way for us in the World Cup. He's become a second striker almost. He doesn't. He's not really a wing player. He's not really someone that creates from wide areas. He likes running in central areas. He likes running into the box and being kind of a target. He seems to recognize when to make that run into the box, and he works here.
Yeah, yeah, he did. And I mean, maybe it was a weird game because there were moments where I was like, "Hey, this might be like more of this potential turnaround at Chelsea." Because it was
Yeah.
like, well, but Everton had an answer for everything. Felix scored, then Decoy scored, and then Havertz scored, and then Ellis Sims, who doesn't really play that much. He had a start for Everton earlier and didn't look good, but he's a former Blackpool guy and he scored a boatload of goals for
Oh, I didn't know
Blackpool
that.
to get him into the championship. Yeah,
Ah.
so it was good. It was good to see him score because he's a young player and obviously they're kind of looking for a striker with Calvert Lewin out. So
Yeah.
maybe he can kind of fill in. He
Showed
has had some starts, hadn't played that well, but yeah, it was a huge goal and it could be a very important goal in keeping Everton up in the Premier League because now, I mean, they're starting to get a little bit further away from that danger zone, and just maybe playing a little bit more confident. Deitch has them organized defensively too, which
what's
will always help.
what's dangerous for Everton is you get a sense of what you're going to get now. You're seeing consistent performances, which is good. See, you're not
Yeah.
necessarily seeing that with these other teams.
And they
Um,
have like a identity, a way
they do.
way they want to play.
Hmm. And what's kind of annoying about that is even if you know what they're going to do, it's hard to necessarily to defend against that because of who they have as aerial targets with Onana and Decore, and that kind of gets us to the goal that they score. I mean, they wait till the 66th minute to get the first corner kick, but then they get a second one immediately following because they weren't able to handle Onana. The leadoff before the corner kick is maybe the best Everton look on the ball. They're moving around with ease. No one on Chelsea is able to get close enough to them, and it's lackadaisical by Felix and Gallagher here. And by the time Reece James is able to close down on anyone, he's forced to block a cross that goes out of bounds. And it proves costly because McNeil is able to pick out Tarkovsky, who picks out who beats Fofana and Koulibaly in the air and basically flicks a ball towards goal that Decore then redirects. But and Havertz basically he's close to clearing this off the line, but he's not able to get there in time. But it's risky because Everton have been good on corner kicks since Dyche arrived. I think that's how they beat Arsenal, and
Yeah, yeah.
they almost scored versus Liverpool. I remember they
It's a Dyche staple.
before Liverpool had that awesome counter. I'm pretty sure Tarkowski or someone had a header that ended up hitting the post. Um,
I can't remember.
oh
Hmm.
well, it would
But
have
yeah,
been
I mean that's part of the Dyche identity too.
it just Tarkowski looks an entirely different player with them, which is funny.
He really does. Yeah, he looks like back at home with Dyche.
There we go. And then Havertz does get the PK. I mean, this is kind of I think it's clever by Reece James. I mean, Fofana kind of gets the ball and he's able to carry it upfield himself. So this shows you what Fofana can offer as well. But it also allows Reece because of what Fofana can offer on the ball. It allows Reece James to be a little more threat running upfield than necessarily further back. If Chalobah's playing or someone else, I don't think they would kind of offer what Fofana does here. And that forces you to kind of start higher upfield, which I think helps out because that letting James get the ball closer to your final third, I think helps you if you're Chelsea, and that's not what Everton want.
No, yeah, not at
And
all.
it hurts because all James does is a 1-2 to get the ball with Felix. He gets the ball back, and Godfrey kind of gets his legs tangled under him and bowls him over. And then Havertz converts the PK, unlike he did with Dortmund.
Yeah, true.
And then Everton in the 90th minute do get a goal back. And what's interesting here is Iwobi kind of mishits the ball to Sims, and Kepa has the ball at his feet, and he quickly takes a touch, and without even like thinking, he just boots it upfield. And in the next time that Chelsea touched the ball, they're kicking the ball out of the net. And
Mhm.
it's small to kind of harp on, but he's got two teammates next to him. All he has to do is just kind of do a square pass, and Chelsea are able to keep the ball. And maybe this doesn't happen. I don't know. But the next thing to
Yeah,
highlight is it's an incredible pickup by Mikolenko. He's being pressured on the corner. He's on the sideline, and he picks out an inch perfect ball like 30 yards upfield to Decore, and then Decore, without even like kind of thinking about it, just does a one timer to Sims, making a run, kind of splitting. I think it's Chalba and Koulibaly, but it's bad by Enzo Fernandez here. So we hyped him up earlier in the show, and we're gonna touch on what he messes up here because he needs to either be tighter on Decore or he needs to be goal side of him, and that's the reason why maybe Mikolenko kind of sees this. But Enzo is just kind of marking no one. Decore is in front of him, and Decore does a really nice one timer. And then Sims kind of just beats Koulibaly for dust, and he gets a shot on goal to beat Kepa.
yeah, it was great. It was good to see. It was a good. It was like it kind of shows Everton's changed mentality with Deitch too. Anytime there was a setback and they were down, it was let's get back to work and let's keep fighting. And that's what Deitch kind of another thing that Deitch kind of brings to his teams is they're a fighting team and they go down 1-0, no worries. We're gonna respond. And they go down 2-1, and again keep fighting and end up getting a point. And it could be a huge point. It's a point off of a traditional top four team. I know Chelsea, are like 10th. They're not playing that well, but
Oh
it's
wait,
still a good point
oh wait,
for
Chelsea
Everton.
as well.
Oh yeah, at Chelsea. So good
And
point.
I mean, another thing that's happened with it's combined with Dice returning, but also Decory's finally healthy again. He missed a lot of the first half of the season. Decory's a good player. You kind of forget how he's well rounded. And this is a
Yeah,
wonderful
he's
pickup.
really
This is a wonderful pickup at him. But one thing I'm going to highlight is Chalaba is playing instead of Fofana. I don't think this goal happens if Fofana is playing. So
good.
it's hard for Potter to kind of see that in hindsight. But the sub did not necessarily work out because Koulibaly is forced to kind of defend this on himself. Chalaba is in no man's land, and Ellis Sims only has one player to beat instead of two. And
Yeah, true. You don't want to be one on one and that extra cover, at least that one extra man. So like if if Chelsea's bringing three in the tech, you want at least four defenders back, so you have that extra person to cover.
so I think maybe the fourth on take is this was a tale of what both managers did. Chelsea went up 2-1 with the PK, and Dyche brought on Sims and Mikolenko, and Potter ended up maybe thinking the game was won. And he brought on Loftus Cheek over Kovacic. Loftus Cheek isn't necessarily as good on the ball in midfield. Chukwuemeka, he's almost like a defensive minded midfielder to play as the right winger. And Chalaba, and the XG was 2.3 to Chelsea, but Everton had 2.4. Chelsea had 20
Ooh,
shots and 7 on target. Everton had 12 and 3. But the interesting here is 9 of those shots and 3 on target were in the second half.
wow,
So Dyche turned things around. I mean, Pickford also had 5 saves. Pickford was big as well.
he was. Yeah, he
But
was huge.
but the interesting here was Chelsea attempted more long balls than Everton. We make fun of Everton and Dyche ball, and it was 30 for 58 versus 11 and 48. Obviously, Chelsea were better at the long ball, but that was
Yeah,
interesting as well.
that is an interesting stat. Huh. It's not very Chelsea-esque.
And the interesting thing here is I think it is better when Chelsea are able to get their wingbacks high upfield. That helps with their width in the attack. And I personally did like what I saw from Felix. I don't necessarily know if from Pulisic. I don't necessarily know if Felix and Havertz still work together. That to me is kind of off in the up because at times Felix was the one that was playing in the middle. Havertz was kind of forced to play out on the white side, and Havertz doesn't really have the pace to kind of do that and to really kind of be any kind of threat. And the thing that's
Yeah,
interesting here is Mason Mount has been healthy and hasn't been starting in a couple of these games lately. So I don't know if he's been given a rest or what, but that's been kind of interesting. And I guess for us, like, I kind of hope that sticks because I liked what Pulisic had to offer. So I want to see more of it.
yeah. Mason Mount wasn't even on the bench in this one, so I don't know. Yeah, maybe he's just a healthy scratch
Oh, maybe
or
that was it. Oh, okay,
resting. I don't know. Yeah, he wasn't even on the bench, so I don't know what's going
interesting. Maybe has he yellow card accumulated? Maybe he's
I have
suspended.
no idea.
Huh. Oh well.
Yeah, he might have been.
But he hasn't. Maybe he has something because he hasn't been starting in a number of these games, which was,
Hmm.
anyways. Yeah, I mean, you was to kind of stick on Everton. You mentioned like the hero is Sims, and that is someone that they kind of need to have going for them. But I think it is also big for them because they're able to kind of keep a little momentum after the Brentford win. So
Yeah, absolutely. And momentum could be key for them for sure. Let's see. Okay, Mason Mount. I think it's a little injury because he has been withdrawn from England as of 2 days ago.
ah,
So it might have been just like a little injury or a little knock or something.
uh-huh.
They kept him out.
And so, I mean, to kind of touch on Chelsea a little bit, it does feel like we're still waiting for Potter to kind of figure out the right front three that he wants to play. I do like the pivot, the midfield pivot of Enzo and Kovacic. I think that's worked for them at least when it comes to keeping the ball and doing the building possession. But you also see that it's not necessarily the most secure when it comes to winning the ball back and being defensive. Enzo Fernandez is
Mhm.
not really a defensive midfielder by trade. I think he may be struggling a little bit with that. And I do think the back line has improved since Fofana's return, but you also see what happens when he's kind of forced out. Chalaba can't do what he has to offer, and I think they look vulnerable in that respect. And another thing, to maybe highlight, and this is maybe unfair or not. I'll see what you have to say. I think Kepa is still a liability for them, and so whatever they do next season, in the summer, I think they need to keep that in mind. Now, Mendy's been hurt this season, so maybe they want to stick with Mendy, but Mendy was having issues as well. But Kepa I don't think Kepa has the best, dive save radius, as well, but he's so poor on the ball. I think that hurts you in
Mm.
this kind of level.
Yeah, I think they're definitely better off with Mendy and Kepa. Just he was such a high price tag for a goalkeeper to be kind of like a bench player now. I don't know. He might be hard to get rid of until that contract runs out because he might be sitting there being like, I'm making a ton of money here and I'm actually playing a decent because Mindy's hurt. So I don't know. It might be one of the ones where Chelsea might want to get rid of him and Kepa's like, hey, I'm pretty happy to just run my contract here.
And, we kinda mentioned on Pulisic. I mean, we it is the international break, and I don't necessarily know if he's been I invited or not, but
Yes, yeah, he's invited.
so I imagine we'll see him. I hope we kind of see a little of this form, as well. We're playing, what is it, El Salvador and Grenada.
Yeah,
So, I actually did like what I saw, so, we'll see if that happens, and I'd like to see maybe him get a little more playing time if we can, with Chelsea, 'cause
absolutely.
they need Mudryk is also, playing, an option on that left spot, so that's the problem, that left spot is kind of taken by, like, 5 people. But
It really is.
One
Yeah,
thing that Pulisic does have offer in him is he can put his foot on the ground and actually shoot. But you need, like you said, you need goals sometimes from wide areas, and that's something that Pulisic can offer them. He's not necessarily gonna
absolutely.
try to get by someone and create for others. He's actually gonna try to shoot. He's not gonna try to be cute like Felix. But anyways,
Yeah, true.
do, 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 do. It's also one thing I want to mention is it's got to be weird for Chelsea fans right now because the league hasn't gone anywhere where you necessarily think it could go. You're still alive in Champions League, and they've drawn Madrid, and it's Real Madrid just beat Liverpool 6-2 aggregate. But it's weird because I think Chelsea are going to view Real Madrid as the team that they almost beat last year, and
Mm,
if people don't remember that, after 2 legs, it went to extra time, and Madrid needed extra time. They needed, I think, Benzema PK, to go past Chelsea, but Madrid also needed to have, I think, a Rodrigo or Benzema, late goal, just to even get to extra time. Like, Chelsea kind of took it to Real Madrid in Madrid last year, and it's basically the same team that Real Madrid has, and Chelsea, I think, have improved with Enzo Fernandez. I think they've improved, they don't have Rudiger anymore, but I think
yeah.
that back line of Fofana, Koulibaly, and, well, you have to play Batistuta. He's not involved in the Champions League. I guess it would be Cucurella. Can maybe give Madrid fits
Yeah, yeah, we'll see. It's gonna be interesting.
because I think
Yeah, they do seem to match up well, and
a lot of
we'll
people have
see.
penciled in City versus Real Madrid for the semis, and Chelsea might have something to say about that.
Yeah, I think they might, and they might be like, we need to, try to win this. They're in a trouble spot in the league, and maybe this is their way out. And getting back into the Champions League is by actually winning the Champions League itself, which they've done before, where they finished outside the top four
Oh,
and then
you're
won the
right.
Champions League and got in.
I didn't
Yeah,
even
they've
think
done it
about that.
before. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think at the expense of Tottenham, kick Tottenham out.
Oh, that's
Remember that?
oh, I highly forgot about that. That is crushing.
What
Um,
was that, 2012, the Bayern Champions
oh,
League
when they beat
final?
Bayern. Interesting.
Yeah, 2012, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, the Drogba. Um,
Yeah, yeah, the Drogba, yeah.
one thing I want to say, one thing that's interesting as well is Vinny Jr. is on record basically saying Reece James is the hardest defender he's gone up against.
Oh,
Um,
yeah, I saw that too.
I don't know
Yeah.
if he was trying to kind of
Interesting.
rile up Trent Alexander-Arnold before he played, but anyways, he's gonna have to do that again. So we'll see. And maybe Mudryk can kind of do well. Another thing maybe touch on is it's taken a little time for a few of these Chelsea players to adjust. Mudryk, Madueke, for example. But one guy that's I think finding his groove is Batistuta and Enzo Fernandez. So
Yeah,
still kind of it's a project for Chelsea. I guess we'll
yeah.
put it that way.
I think Enzo will be world class, and he's shown really good glimpses. It's gonna take him a little bit to get settled. And this Chelsea team is, they bought a lot of new players in the January window, so they're gonna have to gel too, and it just takes time.
And then we'll move on to Leeds and Wolves. This one ends 4-2. Goals from Jack Harrison, Luke Eiling to make it 2-0, Rasmus Christensen at 3-0. And you're thinking, oh, well, that's probably a game, set, and match. And then Johnny Otto comes out and has a bit of a wild, let's say 20 minutes, because he has almost a wonder goal to make it 3-1. Then Mateus Cunha makes it 3-2 in the 73rd minute, and then Johnny Odo also gets a yellow or a red card, and basically Wolves are able to kind of end it a little bit late with Rodrigo coming on, making it 4-2. But there's a little controversy in that goal as well. So this is not necessarily as comfortable as maybe the scoreline showed. We'll kind of just get started. I guess. What were your first takeaways with this, Rex?
Oh man, well, it was kind of honestly, it was a bit unexpected for me
It
because
was
Wolves
unexpected. Oh,
have
absolutely.
it, yeah, and Wolves just have been pretty solid defensively, and Leeds, at some points in the season, like can't buy a goal. So to actually have Leeds score four, it was very intriguing because it looked like on paper like that Wolves defense had Leeds United's offense like in their pocket on paper, but and some of the goals are weird too. Like Luke Ayling and Christensen scoring is a little bizarre. Rodrigo's back and really carrying them in the beginning of the season. So I don't know. It was a very weird game, but it was a good game. It was an entertaining game. Had red cards as well. It really had everything we wanted. A bunch of shots, 34 shots combined.
Well, I think
So yeah,
I
it was a fun game.
I think the amazing thing is the score line is 4-2 for Leeds, and yet I think player of the game was the Leeds keeper. Weirdly enough, in Melee, because he made a number of these saves. But you're right, it was 23 shots and 8 on target for Wolves, and a
Yeah,
Wolves team that you don't think of is that prolific. And it was wild, 16 shots inside the box.
yeah. Jeez. And then yeah, 8 saves for Messier is a boatload.
And the Jimenez doesn't necessarily get a goal here, but he helps. I do think it we haven't necessarily seen it yet, but that Mateus Cunha kind of second strike partnership uh, with Jimenez, I think works. And another thing too is kind of seen this a few times from Lopetegui, is sometimes his switch almost it feels defensive, but what he does is he brings on a third center back, and he did that in halftime as well. And what he does is he
Mm.
moves to a back three and he brings on Dama Traore and basically plays him as a wing back, and it
Oh,
seems to
yeah.
just give teams absolute fits. And Leeds got lucky here, I think, actually, because you see they still have issues defensively. But
Oh yeah.
I mean, they get the first goal in like the 6th minute, and it comes after a little sustained pressure from Wolves. And one player to maybe touch on is Nato had a really good first half for Leeds, and he was beating Semedo for fun. Semedo gets kind of beat a number of times here. Semedo was actually really poor, unfortunately for Wolves, and we'll get to Gianni Otto. He had
Mm.
an interesting game as well, but just Wolves can't necessarily handle the crosses coming in. Leeds able to kind of recycle a couple of attacks, and then Nato basically receives the ball out wide again, and basically he blows past Semedo, run into the byline, and then has a cutback that Jack Harrison is there to meet and finish. And it's just kind of 5 minutes into the game, so there's maybe a little some excuse here, but the it's really poor defending by Wolves just kind of start, especially by Semedo.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Smedo was pretty poor on the day, which is, I mean, he hasn't played that well since coming from Barca with a bunch of high hopes because he was at Barca. So it was a bad day for him. Bad day for Nunez too, getting the red card.
Oto.
He was rested and had to come in,
Oh,
and
oh,
he
you're
could
right.
be a huge miss. Yeah,
Just
he could
got it.
be a huge miss in the future. So we'll see. It's a straight red. So
He did that, yeah, I entirely forgot about that. He did, like,
Castro got
it
the red
wasn't
too. Two
necessarily
reds.
it wasn't the Mitrovic thing, but he apparently brushed into a ref.
Hmm.
Um, yeah. I mean, to kind of stick on the first goal, though, one thing I wanna touch on is Tyler Adams didn't start. I guess he kinda messed something a little bit in, uh, uh, warm-ups or, I guess, training, and so the
Hmm.
midfield was McKennie and Roca. So it was interesting to kind of see that because we hadn't seen McKennie in a couple of these games. And McKennie, for this goal, McKennie and others kind of make a run in front of Nato, kind of basically making a run towards goal. And what Harrison does is Harrison kind of stays where he is and basically runs towards the ball. And sometimes that's all you need because it's a cutback goal. And so it's clever by Harrison to kind of do that. He sees everyone else is making that same run. Why would I do that? And kind of crowd the area. And he kind of runs backward a little bit and he finds the ball. And it's a really good finish.
Oh, it's a fantastic finish. Yeah.
And then Lopetegui has seen enough. He wants to kind of change things up. He wants to, he like I said, he subs off Dawson, brings on Collins, he brings on Sarabia, and he's like, "Hey guys, let's because we're only down one, maybe we can change things up a little bit." And whatever pregame talk he said did not work out because in the 49th minute they forget to mark Luke Ayling on a corner kick. It's just completely, it's a guy completely 4 feet from goal, and it's probably the easiest goal Luke Ayling will score in his life.
Yeah, true. Very easy.
And it's
Kind of
it's
surprising goal score too for
Oh,
me.
it's another thing. It's man marking. But you see João Gomez completely loses his man, and Ailing's able to just kind of make a clever run to the back post. The ball basically bounces as well. That's kind of the issue as well, because the ball doesn't just like fly to Ailing; it bounces, and just Ailing's at the back post, and there's just absolutely no one near him, and it's really easy for him. And then the third goal comes from a sub, Christensen. Christensen just to come on, and Johnny on the spot. Speaking of Johnny, he beats Johnny Otto here pretty badly. So Otto again had an interesting 20 minutes here. I mean Harrison whips the ball in. It looks kind of harmless. It looks like Otto can either head this away, he can clear it. He has a number of chances to kind of do something here. Christensen stays with it, wins it off Otto, and then finds himself kind of close to the goal, finishes the chance. And another thing too is Christensen still has a lot to do to beat Kilman. So he blows past Kilman like he's not there, and it's a good finish by Saw. But what he does is he kicks it through Saw's legs. So Saw can maybe it's close. It's close to him. So I don't necessarily know how much you can blame Saw here. And then
Yeah, he's been good for them for Wolves too, but he probably should have saved that one if it went through his legs.
3-0. You think that's a game. And then just out of nowhere, Wolves get one back by Yanni Otto. And things get a little crazy here because Sarabia kind of gets the ball and then sends a really good ball over the top for Jimenez. And Jimenez is trying to make a run behind. Melia is quick to kind of come off his line and he heads the ball away. But Leeds can't win the ball back. And actually, I think it's Rucka. Rucka has a really bad clearance and it basically hits the ball to Otto. And Otto, without even a second thought, kind of decides to go all David Beckham, and one times the ball into the net from like 38 yards. Open net and pulls it off, and momentum basically changed after that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, Wolves could have had a penalty a little bit after this, and before the second goal with Cunha, and even after that, Melier is kind of forced to make a strong save to stop a Jimenez strike from close range, and just out of nowhere, just Wolves kind of just found new life somewhere, and then they do get the second goal, and again, it comes from a corner kick, and it's not necessarily the first ball whipped in, so Leeds can't clear the ball, the play is recycled, which is another thing that we've seen, and then a loose ball finds Cunha, and kind of the negative here is it's just a shot, and it deflects off Werber to go past Melier. But it's a big risk having a lot of bodies in front of the goal, and this is the risk. Sometimes you get deflections like this where the keeper is kind of caught wrong-footed.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is weird, but both the goal scorers for Wolves also later in the game got red cards. So each a goal and a red card apiece, which is kind of interesting to see.
And then, from a Leeds perspective, at least on the corner kick, Wolves basically win like every 50-50 ball, like three straight occasions. So like they're Leeds have issues at the back defensively, which you see here, and then the red card happens, and that basically kills the game, because Otto, and it's his fault too, because he gets caught taking a heavy touch, and then he kicks the ball kind of too far the where he needs to. He tries to stretch out and basically to not get past Ailing, and instead he kind of goes studs up and goes high on Ailing's shin. It wasn't called red in real time, but on rewatch, it's impossible to kind of say that wasn't the right call.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Yeah, definite red.
And Rodrigo kind of comes on and makes it 4-2. It's a nice finish by him, but the issue here was it looked like Adama had his shirt being pulled, and basically he stopped playing. And this is on Adama for stop playing because there was no whistle. And Leeds able to kind of win the ball back. Somerville runs to the loose ball and quickly plays in Rodrigo, and then it's a nice finish by Saw. And you mentioned Mateus Nunes, and you're right, he wasn't even playing, and he gets sent off by yelling at the ref for allowing this. And there was a whole lot of turmoil after this, but you played to the whistle, as the kids say.
Oh, I messed up on the red cards. It was only Yoni because it was a different. It was Matthews Cunha got the goal, and Matthews Nunez got the red. So I messed up on that. So it was only Johnny with the red and a goal.
Oh yeah,
I
yeah,
got I got my Matthewses
but yeah,
confused.
same first name. I'll I'll
Yeah,
I'll,
yeah.
I'll allow it.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Thank you, thank you.
there we go. I mean, we kind of went over the stats. I mean, to kind of touch on the lead side, I do think the defense is still a bit of an issue, but at this point of the stage, points are what matters, not necessarily results. And it's a big 3 points here because one thing, it's 3 points versus maybe a direct competitor that was kind of near you.
Hmm. Yeah, they closed the gap. They're only a point out of 12th place at the highest. So yeah, they're looking pretty good. Last four, they only have one loss, but it's two games in a row without losing. So it's
Mhm.
definitely something that they can build on, and they're starting to score some goals. But I'm with you on the defense. The defense is still not that good, and if they do get relegated, it'll be because of that poor defense.
Yeah, and another thing too is I don't think they're good enough at keeping the ball, and so what that means is you're making the team have majority of possession that's able to kind of go with that defense a little bit,
Yeah,
which over time, yeah, that it feels like they're gonna crumble. So maybe
yeah.
something to be positive about is they do have goals on the team, whether it's Bamford, Rodrigo returning, maybe Harrison starting to get a couple goals here and there, which will help out, but. It is kind of rough.
Yeah.
No Tyler
They scored a lot of goals for where they're at in the table.
no Tyler Adams this game. There've been some Leeds fans that have been like, "Oh, maybe we don't necessarily need him." Well, Wilco was bad in in this game, so I don't necessarily know if that's necessarily it. I don't necessarily know if McKennie though has come in and really improved them, unfortunately. But
Yeah.
he is offering
Yeah.
them a little something, and I don't know. I think it's only a loan, and I don't know if it's going to be more than a loan. So. And to
Yeah.
move on to Wolves, I mean, what do you think of Wolves?
Oh man, it was a bit surprising. They're gonna have to pick up the pieces with all these straight reds. They're not gonna have Castro for a while, and they're not gonna have Nunez for a while. So they have um, but yeah, I don't know. They're just every week we talk about like we just want one of their strikers to score a goal, and Jimenez was
For real.
better. Jimenez was better in this game, but still no goals from your strikers.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just I don't know. They got, I mean, 23 shots though is a lot. So they did have some offense, but I mean, I think if you're a Wolves fan, you just kill for them to get a striker that can score just some goals. They've only scored what have they scored 22 goals the whole year,
Hmm.
which is just absolutely dreadful. 22 is it's tied for the least with a couple other teams with 22 goals.
Hmm.
So, I mean, obviously, like if they get relegated, you can point to their offense not scoring at all, and they were kind of grasping at straws too when they who they get? I forget it. Who's the old guy from? I can't remember. Shoot, Costa. They're kind of
Oh yeah, yeah,
grasping at
yeah.
straws when they brought Costa in. But there's still hope. There's still hope. I think Jimenez can kind of build off this performance potentially
I
and
think it's
start
starting to.
maybe to get on the score sheet. But
I think he started to look
I
good
don't know.
for them. And
And their defense is starting to not be as good as they were either, which is a concern. They're starting to concede more goals than they did in the first half of the season.
yeah,
So
well, yeah, it's Semedo definitely. And one thing, you're not going to have Otto now for I guess 3 games. They lost Bruno
three
Sar,
games.
or they lost Bruno, to injury, and it doesn't seem like Lopetegui likes Ait Nuri, I guess defensively, but you might have to play with him now. But
Yeah, maybe.
I really like the front three that I saw in the second half with Sarabia, Nunez, and Cunha. I think they have a good balance with each other. Neto's kind of come in. He hasn't necessarily worked out. Wang scored versus Newcastle, but he seems to be very hit and miss as well. I'd like to
Oh
maybe
yeah.
see a little bit more of this because we saw this was Fulham, and I thought they looked good versus Fulham before Cunha got hurt, and we saw this versus Liverpool when Wolves looked pretty good versus Liverpool. Actually, smashed Liverpool, unfortunately that
Mhm.
day. Uh, and I guess that's kind of it. I mean, it's the only negative here, I guess, is it is kind of it's probably someone that's kind of close to you, and I think Leeds moved into it within a point of Wolves with this result. So that's kind
Yep.
of that's kind of the negative. Um, and obviously, I don't think it's all rosy because they did play better, at least creating chances. But that you can't get the first goal is really bad defending by Semedo, and the second goal is a worse. It's a worse one to give away because you're not even marking someone on a corner kick.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree. And they weren't making those type of defensive errors in the first half of the
And then we'll move on to Newcastle and Nottingham Forest. This one ends 2-1. First goal by Emmanuel Dennis, then Alexander Ishak comes on and is kind of the hero. So and it's an assist by Willock, and then Willock kind of plays a part for the PK. And I think maybe my leadoff story was it wasn't really the best homecoming for Shelby, facing his old team, but really it was almost like calamitous 3 games in a row for Sven Botman, because he has kind of the
year.
mistake to kind of put his team in the hole that Dennis is able to kind of punish. But instead, it turns out to be maybe the break that they kind of needed. Thanks to a mistake by Niakate. Niakate had returned. We haven't seen him all season, and unfortunately, he had a mistake that ended up basically costing them some points. Because he gives up a late PK that Ishak's able to convert, and maybe it gives Newcastle a little bit of a boost to still kind of push something a little bit for the top four.
Yeah, and Niakite definitely shown a little bit of rust, I think, with that mistake. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, we talked about how we like Newcastle, the fact that they have two strikers. So like, if Wilson gets hurt, they do have Isak, or if Isak gets hurt, they have Wilson. So it's good to see Isak getting the goals in this one, and a huge brace that maybe he can build off of too. Because they were able to rest Callum Wilson. So that's another nice thing. Um, but yeah, I
Most
mean,
definitely. Yeah.
I think
He's helped them.
oh, absolutely. But I think Niakate he'll be good. I think it's just rustiness from being out for so long. It was kind of hyped him up in the beginning of the year when they got him, and then he immediately got hurt. So I think it's just chalk that down to a little bit of rest. He'll rebound. Um, but I don't know. I mean, just I think Newcastle are kind of injected themselves back in the top four race, and it's looking pretty tight. They're only 2 points down, and they got two games in hand on Tottenham, so
Well,
they could easily take over that fourth spot.
Well, the interesting thing here is no Almiron. He didn't start the last game, but this time it was because of injury. He has a thigh injury, so he might actually be out for a little bit. And it was maybe the best we've seen Jacob Murphy play, which we'll maybe get to. But Isaac has come in, and I kind of wanted him to start for the last couple of weeks because it has seemed like Wilson has been misfiring. I don't know if it's confidence or whatnot. And Isaac looked good. And it's not just the goal
He
that he
did.
scored, but another thing that's interesting is you see how Newcastle is for depth because D- Alan St. Maxian was subbed off for Elliot Anderson, some like kid, and Anderson actually came
Yeah,
in and looked pretty good. But then it was also Matt Ritchie for Jacob Murphy. I mean, Matt Ritchie is someone where I remember when I was playing FIFA 19, he was one of the first person that I like sold to try to get some funding for someone else. But I didn't even realize Matt Ritchie was still playing, let alone getting some minutes. And then for
yeah,
Nottingham
yeah, yeah. Same
Forest,
here.
you look at the lineup and you can see immediately the issue. In the middle, it's Ryan Yates and John Joe Shelby, and there's just no legs in midfield, and you see that kind of showing up a little bit. I do think there's an issue for Forest. No, they're fine points wise. It's a little bit like Palace. Um, but you don't see any way for them to kind of keep possession in games. Dennis does get a goal here, so that was good. But they've struggled to create as well, and maybe Niakate can come in and help them out. Felipe has been a good signing for them. Felipe has actually been
Yeah,
been quite solid.
I was
Um,
surprised that he signed from Atletico
and
too. So
Naves has
yeah,
been good for them. But other than that, it's
Ooh.
it's it's rough.
They're only 2 points out of relegation zone too. So, ugh, I don't know. I mean, things are. It's going to be tight for them. They don't have a win in the last five either. They only got two draws. Their form isn't necessarily that great. It is better than Leicester.
Hmm.
But some of these other teams at the bottom have been gaining, week by week. So they are kind of sucked in that relegation zone, and it's going to be interesting to see like what they do because their defense, the goals they've conceded, it's a pretty substantial amount compared to some of the teams around them. And the teams around them have scored a lot more, with the exception of Everton. They both have only scored 20, but Leicester scored 38, and they're right behind them on 25 points. So I don't know. Anything can happen, literally from 20th to 12th, like we talked about. Any one of those teams. get relegated or get sucked into the relegation zone. It's all so tight, and this is part of the reason why we love European soccer is because the relegations battle is almost as good as the top of the table battle or a battle for the Champions League spots.
Especially this
So
week.
I mean, we've never seen it this tight. Yeah, this weekend, and we never seen it this tight. You know, from 12th to 20th.
You're right.
I can't remember ever
It's
being this
everyone.
close.
It's everyone that's not right in the bottom of the bottom 10 of the table. Everyone is kind of up for grabs. You're,
'Cause there's only that one. There's that one gap basically from 12th, where Palace is at 27 points, to Villa 11th at 38. So you got a bit of a gap there, 11-point gap. But then other than that, it's all pretty tight.
and speaking of gaps and the thing like I guess like the way results were going, it was so close for being like just a perfect weekend. For a Liverpool fan, with Spurs dropping points, and it felt like Newcastle was so close to maybe kind of playing themselves out of a good spot, and unfortunately they are able to get the all important 3 points, and not only that. Able to get it with Isaac maybe getting a little confidence as well because it's a good PK that he takes. That's a little
It's good
unfortunate.
race.
I mean, the stats for Forest though are quite troubling. Point 0.3 xG. They did have 5 shots and 3 on target. One big missed chance. Newcastle had three chances. And Newcastle with 15 and 4. But Forest with 192 passing, 67% accuracy, and they were 29 of 79 for long balls.
Ooh,
And
weird.
so you're not able to keep possession, but I don't really see how you're going to win the ball back with the midfield that you're playing. So, I mean, we'll touch on Forest, but I mean, for Newcastle, no Almiron, no Callum Wilson. Alan Saint-Maximin was subbed on in halftime, and no Joe Linton because of the yellow cards. So you're like, where's Newcastle supposed to go? And of course, it's Alexander Isak, which he was 70 million when they bought him. So it makes sense that he's coming good for them. But then Joe Willock,
Yeah,
Joe Willock had a good game. He had two. I think he's responsible for both assists, or he had the ball that led to the handball, and then Elliot
right.
Anderson came on and he scored, and it was just kind of he chopped off for like a weird offside, but he came on and looked pretty good for them, and
Yeah,
then
they're starting to get a little bit of bench depth, which was part of the problem in previous seasons. Because they would rely on Callum Wilson, then you get hurt, and they'd have no. Now they have some good depth in some spots. They still need a little bit more depth, but they got some depth going on now.
it was a weird game to be honest. I mean, away to
It was.
Forest is maybe kind of maybe it's a hard place to play. We've kind of mentioned that, but the Sven Botman mistake was just weird. There were a number of chances that Newcastle kept creating and then screwing up on. They kept kind of
Yeah,
hitting the ball over the top or out of bounds, and so the goal that they scored with Elliot Anderson was chopped off because an inadvertent touch by a player just being on the ground, like it randomly hit him. Um, it was just there were a lot of reasons for this to go haywire, and because it didn't, again, I do think that's something that Newcastle can kind of pick themselves up on and boost them a little bit. But another thing too was no Almiron, and I do think it was maybe the best game that we've seen from Jacob Murphy.
yeah,
And with
absolutely.
Willock as well. Like it wasn't really flashy, but the service that they were sending in from the right areas was giving Forest fits all game. And another problem was you saw Nottingham Forest struggle at any kind of aerial duel, which we'll get to. Um,
Yeah,
but another thing too is Bruno Guimaraes was 7 for 7 in ground duels, and that says a lot about Bruno as a player. But I think it also says a little bit about what Forest had in midfield, unfortunately.
yeah, yeah. Good point. Good point.
Um, and to touch on Forest, you see the roster makeup. I don't understand how Danilo can't get a game over Shelby. So that's
Yeah,
one thing. But another thing is to
that's
look
a good
at
point.
is uh, it, you don't really see they don't. Unlike other teams, it doesn't seem like they have a defense that can just soak up a lot of pressure and then that can maybe get you results like a clean sheet. Now you have Naves behind you. That's really it. I think they're missing Boley since he's been
Yeah,
hurt, and they're going to need
yeah. Good point.
Niakate to come through and be good for them because they
Yeah,
can't
he's gonna
they,
shake
they
off that rust as
they
quickly
can't
as
keep
possible.
possession, and they struggled. They in this game they really struggled on any ball that was like looped in. They struggled kind of handling that. And then in midfield,
Yeah,
it's Shelby and Ryan Yates in the middle of the park. They're not gonna do a
yeah.
whole lot for
Don't
you.
like that.
Yeah.
No, yeah, I don't like that at all.
And then we'll move on to Brentford and Leicester City. We'll kind of move on a little bit here 'cause I think we kind of went on a little bit long, but we don't have to spend a ton of this game because not a lot happened in this game, unfortunately.
True.
Which is weird
Yeah, truly.
because I don't know if you remember this, Rex. The first time that these two met was also the first game in the season, and it was one of the better games in the season. I think Brentford came back to down 2 goals to end up tying 2-2. A lot
Yeah,
more,
yeah, it was a really good game.
a lot more fireworks that day
Oh,
than necessarily here. I mean,
yeah, more goals and shots on target in this one.
the interesting here was Thomas Frank has kind of stuck with the strategy all year. So he'll basically play a back three. He'll play like a 3-5-2 versus like the big boys. And then basically he plays a 4-3-3 versus competition, like I guess the coach views they're similar to. And what's kind of funny is he's almost been really consistent at doing this. It's not even like a surprise. Like Leicester probably could have been like, oh, they're going to play 4-3-3 against us.
Yeah.
And then with, I guess an interesting thing was Damsgaard getting the start again. He's starting, and
Mhm.
we saw an all Danish midfield for Thomas Frank, and it it didn't really work, unfortunately.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's seen better days, but it wasn't terrible, but yeah, I don't know, maybe De Silva in there. I mean, he came on um later on, maybe on Yeka, he doesn't play as much, but it wasn't terrible. It wasn't terrible, but yeah, there's some room, especially Damsgaard.
It felt like if they really struggled when Jensen went out, like they struggled to kind of just can't keep the ball at all.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
you,
that's
you
true.
you kind of see what he offers, and hopefully that's not a big injury. But he had to be subbed off, and then for Leicester, they went back to a 4-2-3-1 with Daka playing as like the lone striker. I think they went to a back four because you mentioned route phase, because we saw a back three versus Chelsea. And this one didn't necessarily work out as well either. Another thing that was interesting is we saw Daniel Iverson get a start at keeper over a healthy Danny Ward, which was
Mhm.
interesting.
Yeah, yeah, it's gonna be interesting. He's been pushing Ward for a lot of the season. He's a decent young keeper, so yeah, well, let's see what he can do. It'll be interesting to see. Because he I mean, he wasn't really tested too much in this one. Didn't get the clean sheet, but I think he only had like 2 saves because Brentford only had 2 shots on. So
Yeah. And I mean, to touch on the goal that Brentford score, it's similar to a theme that I mentioned for other games. It comes from a corner kick, but it's not the initial corner kick. It's kind of the second ball or the recycled attack that really gives them fits. I mean, Leicester look lost at the start because Brentford have about 4 guys completely unmarked. And basically they go short here. So and Damsgaard kind of plays the ball short to Rico Henry, who then kind of sends the ball over the top that finds Bremo. And Bremer scores a ball that's kind of blocked off, and then the rebound kind of falls to Jensen, who takes a shot and it deflects past Iverson. But
mhm.
and Jensen's starting to kind of heat up a little bit for them, so that was good. Unfortunately,
Yeah, I think
we'll, we'll,
it's
we'll see
what
what
is it?
we'll see
Four
what the
goals
injury
and
is.
5 home games. So, yeah,
Something
we'll
like
see what
that.
the injury.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, pretty impressive.
And what's weird is Brentford started the game, I thought, looking pretty good. It seemed like they recognized there was an issue on Leicester's right hand side, maybe with Tete. I don't know what it was, but Rico Henry was actually having a little fun down there, and they just weren't able to kind of make it count. And then for some reason, all that fun stopped in the second half, and Leicester were able to make it 1-1. This one came from Barnes. The thing to touch on here is Leicester kind of do well to press Brentford to turn it over. And I think it's Damsgaard that has the mistake. Damsgaard tries a risky pass, and then Dewsbury Hall is able to basically wiggle out his way out of like three players kind of pressing him, and then it threads a pass upfield to Madison. And it's like the one time when Madison was actually able to kind of influence the game. He gets kind of a pocket of space in the middle of the field. It's the most dangerous spot probably for someone like Madison. And without even like hesitation, he looks up and plays the ball to Harvey Barnes, making the run, and then he finishes really good. Um, but
Good
I think
finish. Yeah.
the thing to touch on here was, and it's a really nice pickup by Madison. This goal comes from Dewsbury Hall, basically, escaping pressure from the three Brentford defenders kind of on him because he's on the touchline and it looks like he's got nowhere to go. But another thing too is because Dewsbury Hall is doing such a good job, and he's also able to kind of brush off Damsgaard kind of on him on his back. That moved Norgard to kind of help out, and Norgard left the area where Madison was. So. And yeah, that was kind of unfortunate from a Brentford perspective, and you also see what quality Madison can have. He doesn't need long, and it doesn't need a lot to influence a game. He just needs
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
and
Just a
and,
little bit. Yeah.
and he hurt him. And that was pretty much it. I mean, Leicester, I thought pressed Brentford a little bit more in the second half, and Brentford kind of struggled to kind of keep the ball. It's not the worst result. Maybe
Yeah.
the main thing to talk about is they were able to keep their winning ways. They won 2-0 versus Southampton, made Southampton look pretty poor. But like you
True.
said, they had 11 shots and 2 on target, but they had 9 shots in the first half. They were poor in the second half, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And
It
then
really was a tale of two halves for both. Yeah, for both teams.
Leicester scored, and that was the only shot they had. They were able to test Ray on. I I I
Yeah.
I I don't think playing Docker or Vardy as like a lone striker worked. Baptiste came on in the second half, got 2 yellows, and that was in like the 79th minute or so. So there was still like 10 minutes to maybe try to get something more than a point. And it was weird. How Iheanacho came on for Madison in the 90th minute. It was it was
Yeah.
it was weird
Like
by
not enough time
Rodgers.
to do anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's just too little, too late.
And so, I don't it's not necessarily the best game from Tony, but Tony did have a good, game midweek game versus Southampton, but, I mean,
Yeah, it's true.
do you agree with the strategy to kind of, switch on the formation depending on the opponent? Or to me, I honestly feel like the 3-5-2 shape maybe works a little bit better. I think Rico Henry works better as maybe a wing back, maybe same with Hickey. But that way, because being a fullback, you have a little bit more defensive duties.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I think they actually do
I
they
don't know.
do play better with 3 back, I think, but
Yeah.
'cause they play really well against, top 6, I guess, sides. They play really well, so maybe it does work, well, especially when you're playing, like, superior teams, but at the very least, it's a little bit of flexibility and, a little bit of unpredictability that's getting ready to play them, like, looking at, "Oh, what are they gonna play? Are they gonna play 3 in the back? Are they gonna 4 in the back? We gotta," although it is kinda easier if you look at who they play. Like you said, the teams that are closer to them, they kind of go with the four back. So maybe
Every
Leicester's kind
time.
of should have been expecting that, but at least its ability to play different formations is nice.
If I'm like an opposing manager, I'd like use that as motivation. Be like, guys, we're not one of the teams that playing three at the back. They don't respect us.
Yeah, yeah, true.
um, and real quick, I mean, do you have any thoughts on Damsgaard? Because he it seems like Frank is trying to help him out, trying to give him different positions. Jeremy seems to have hope for him. Um,
Yeah,
I fear it's maybe a little too physical for him. Like he gets brushed over by Dewsbury Hall for that goal.
yeah, he is pretty like skinny and yeah, maybe I don't know. Maybe it's just an adjustment period. Maybe he's still just getting used to the physicality of the Premier League. Maybe too. I don't know. Maybe he'll hit the weight room with Brentford trainers in the summer and gain a little bit of muscle because I think he will be a good player. I think it's been an adjustment period.
Mhm.
But there's been some good moments in there as well that hopefully he'll learn from. So I think he will be a good player. It's just gonna take a bit of time, and he also I mean he was out basically all of last year as well.
Yeah,
So he's kind of getting back to form. Well, he hasn't played that much until recently. So I think I agree with Jeremy. I think he'll come good. It just might take a little, but that's okay. They're going to be back in the Premier League next year. So
I mean he's silky on the ball. I mean that's definitely you can see there's a player there. Just
yeah,
seeing him brushed off was kind of rough. Um,
true. Yeah, we
uh,
saw him in Euros too, like some stunner goals
yep.
back a couple years ago. So yeah, there's a player there. Yeah,
And then for Leicester, one thing that's kind of funny is um, we touched on it last week how it seemed like the back three that they had they were really vulnerable to kind of any kind of ball over the top, but in a weird way because Brentford weren't necessarily able to kind of counter on them nearly as much. It was almost a good kind of matchup for them because you don't think about this because going against Ivan Tony. You think, oh, maybe that's usually going to be bad for the opposing center backs. Harry Suter was 6 of 6 in his duels.
okay.
Brentford were able to kind of get the ball out wide to Henry, and he was crossing it in, but Suter was able to kind of handle it. He handled the physical battle, so it was a good game for him.
Yeah, definitely, and they could use that. The defense could use that for sure.
And we'll move on to Aston Villa and Bournemouth. They win 3-0. I think my leadoff story was thanks Bournemouth for showing up and not just doing this last week. But another thing to kind of say is it was interesting to see how much different Aston Villa were able to play this game than Liverpool, which I think kind of says it all really because Bailey,
Yeah,
Brendia, Ramsey, and Watkins were able to take people on 1v1. And another thing too is Douglas Luiz has got a little wiggle to him as well. He's a defensive minded midfielder, but he can offer a little bit in the attack, and he's not pressable, so he's good at getting out of a press. He's good at creating chances, and he scores. He scores the first goal.
yeah, yeah. It was a good goal too.
And yeah, for Bournemouth, maybe the thing to touch on is John Brooks made his return to football after being diagnosed with I think stage 2 leukemia. It's one
Yeah,
of
I think.
some kind of disease. Um,
Yeah,
and
I
and
think
that
it was
was
the
and that was good because before this diagnosis, he was talked about as someone that was maybe probably going to make a move somewhere.
Yeah,
He was quite a good youngster. And
he was.
it's good that he's been able to stick to football and be able to maybe get a return. We'll kind of
Yeah,
see if that was just sentimental or not. But and maybe they could
it's a
use
good
him.
comeback story.
He's a good
I think they could.
he was a good creative player when he was playing.
Yeah, they could totally use a creative player.
And I mean like, that's pretty much it. I mean the interesting thing here is the goals did come kind of interesting. They got the early one in the 70th minute, but Solanke did have a couple chances here to maybe he was through on goal that actually forced a really good save by Martinez. Bournemouth were able to somewhat be in this, and then the second goal comes in the 80th minute. That makes it 2-0, and then Bournemouth do what they've been doing all season, which if they do go down, I think it'll be because of this. They can't defend a set piece to save their life, and Villa do get the third one because uh, Tyron Mings just wins a header of just no one marking him, and I think he like flicks it to Bredea, and Bredea just kind of heads it in.
Mm. Yeah, they've conceded a massive amount of goals to it. At 54, it's well above. I think the closest is 49. So yeah, it's pretty atrocious defense all year, and especially on set piece.
And it's another case where the game went entirely different from the first week of the season because I don't know if you remember this or not. Bournemouth got the shock result 2-0 over Gerrard's team. And
Yeah,
little maybe they remember that payback was a little differently. Um,
yeah,
but when you're playing against like that 4-4-5-1 block, I'm not even gonna call Billing being a second attacker. He's a defender for most of that too. Um,
yeah,
you're able to maybe force that mindset a little bit. But another thing too is when you're up against a deep block, what you need someone to beat a man 1v1. And
mhm,
it's what Rod Ramsey, Watkins, Bredea, and Bailey are capable of doing. And Liverpool kind of struggled. So it is what it is.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah. Good point.
20 shots and 9 on target. So that team was Bournemouth were defending deep, and you're able to at least get test the keeper as well. It wasn't just like they were shots that were being blocked off. They were
Yeah,
good.
yeah, they're good.
To be fair to them, and
Absolutely.
Bournemouth maybe you had too much celebrating that Liverpool win. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe.
And one thing that's interesting though is the way that Unai Emery has come in compared to what Gerard was doing is he doesn't have the fullbacks playing suicide football. And so when Matty Cash plays, you don't see him trying to basically score a goal. He's crossing the ball in, but he's doing it from like a deeper position. So if they do lose the ball, he's able to run back and play defense. You're seeing Alex Moreno being played over Digna, where Digna used to kind of be you do the Trent thing, where he would just basically have his own position at times, and that was leaving them vulnerable to just counter after counter. And it seems Unai Emery has come in and basically made Villa they're the most exciting week to week, but relatively consistent. And
Yeah, you just kind of steadied the ship after Gerard left.
'cause
He's done a good job.
people were worried Villa might actually go down, and when you look to the roster, you're like, that shouldn't happen." And he's kind of
Yeah,
helped
they're
them
just
out.
too talented.
He's found a way to get a Watkins going for them as well, which
Yeah,
was
yeah. Good point.
maybe being questioned. And so
Mhm.
that's pretty much it. For Bournemouth, Bournemouth did pose a threat and did ask some questions, but they weren't able to necessarily, get that breakaway to count. And I do think their back line is a liability, because they're not just poor on
Yeah.
set pieces; it's poor in general, to be honest. Because Stevens, I think it's for the is it for the second goal? Du-du-du-du-du. The second goal is really, really poor because Jack Stevens is basically not good for 3 minutes here. So he first fouls Ollie Watkins. He doesn't want Watkins to run behind him, and then he basically after the restart he's caught sleeping and stabs and misses on Jacob Ramsey. He just like skates by him, and then Ramsey's able to get the pass past Neto. So uh, there's still some issues for Bournemouth to worry about.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. They're in a spot of bother for sure.
And then one thing I wanted to kind of point to is, so let's see, with like 10-ish games to go, the goal differential. So in 17th, we have -19 for Wolves. In 18th spot, we have -23 for Southampton. Southampton used to be worse, so they've kind of helped out a little bit here. In the past few years, goal differential has actually helped predict who actually goes down.
Okay.
19th is -27 at Nottingham and -29 for Bournemouth. Nottingham pops out on a lot of these, and
Yeah.
Nottingham's not necessarily there, points wise in the table, but for all these other things, they're showing up. The three worst passing teams: Brentford is 18th with a 274, which was surprising. Bournemouth
Dang, that is.
Bournemouth are 264, and then Nottingham Forest 261. So Forest are the worst passing team, and then the worst
Huh.
expected points for teams. It was Fulham, then Wolves, and Everton, and then at 18th it's Crystal Palace, which was interesting.
Ooh,
It's at
that
27, and
is.
then Nottingham Forest 24, and then Bournemouth at 21. And
Huh.
this doesn't necessarily carry relegation significance, but I found this interesting nonetheless.
Yeah.
Distance covered per game. 15th it's Wolves with 106 kilometers. 16th is Aston Villa with 105 kilometers. And 17th is Brighton. So I was surprised by that, to be honest, with
That is surprising.
105. And then 18th is Chelsea. I was like, whoa, you wouldn't expect that for a top team.
No, weird.
105.4. And then it's Nottingham Forest, 105. And then 20th is Crystal Palace. And that makes sense to me. You kind of,
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense
they're
for
not
sure.
running. And so that's pretty much it. The international break is now upon us. We went a little long. We've got Grenada and El Salvador, which is kind of a snooze fest a little bit for me.
Yeah.
All the spice in the U.S. media has been kind of touching on the Reina news, which we don't necessarily have to get into. I'm going to be on Balogun watch. I know he's maybe going to be in Orlando and he's going to be maybe at the game. So
Ooh.
the idea is if we get him, that who cares what we have for a coach? We still don't really have a coach yet. We
Yeah.
get Florian Balogun. That maybe that makes us look a little differently. So that'll be what I'm a little bit
Probably
looking
have that
for.
striker that we want. Yeah.
Yeah.
That'd be awesome.
And I don't know. We'll maybe try to do a Champions League preview or what, but we'll maybe try to get Jeremy on. But that's pretty much it. That's the show. I tried to. I kind of got lost a little bit on time, so I went through that a little bit quickly towards the end. But anything you want to lead off with, Rex? End off with?
No, no, just thanks for watching, everybody. We appreciate it, and yeah, a little break from soccer. It's not going to be a fun weekend, but they'll be back and playing next week. So.
And well, good chance to watch it. Some people really did enjoy the international, enjoy the World Cup. So here's a chance to kind of because I think England or the people in Europe are doing Nations League or whatever. I think we're doing Nations League, so it's not just
Yeah, yeah,
friendlies.
we do.
Um, so I don't know. Like you said, a little break. Little break's not the worst thing in the world. So
Yeah,
we'll return. I guess in April. I think Liverpool open up with Man City, and that'll be that'll be a game to start with April. Maybe we'll just do that game. We'll see if that goes.
yeah, we could spend an hour on that for sure.
All right, and that is it. So for us to at the reserve squad, thank you for listening, and you stay squatting
You stay squatty.
and stop recording.